For many, feeling warmer than it did yesterday, especially with the lighter winds. In the south, we're looking at highs of around 22 or 23 Celsius. Now, as we head towards this evening, most of the showers will start to die out from the west, and so it is looking largely dry. Some late sunny breaks across many parts of Scotland and just 1 or 2 showers here and there. A similar story across Northern Ireland and across northern parts of England. But as we head further south, it's worth bearing in mind that we're going to start to see some cloud and some rain pushing its way in as we go through the end of the day and overnight. That cloud and rain then is going to sweep its way in, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, but also clipping Wales, southwest England, and then feeding in across more northern parts of England and Scotland as we go through the early hours of tomorrow. The rain's going to be quite heavy at times, and there'll be some blustery winds mixed in with it. But with the unsettled weather, we're not going to see temperatures dropping much, generally staying in double figures, so a relatively mild night for most of us. That then takes us into a pretty wet start across northern parts through tomorrow, especially across Scotland and northern England. Some heavy rain continuing and still some blustery winds, but the more persistent rain does clear away towards the north and east. Some showery bursts following in behind, but all the time towards the south-southeast, actually staying largely dry here. Some decent bright spells breaking through, and temperatures, well, similar to today. Bye-bye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with skyroof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 12 o'clock on Wednesday, the 28th of May. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Now, Merseyside police continue to question the suspected driver of the car that ploughed into a crowd during Liverpool's Premier League Champions Parade.
Senior policing figures are warning Sir Keir Starmer will fail to deliver his crime pledges if he presses on with his early release scheme. They warn police forces will not be able to cope with the inevitable increase in crime.
But could their jobs be made easier if cannabis were decriminalised? Well, Sadiq Khan is urging the government to decriminalise small quantities of the drug to stop ethnic communities being targeted and free up police resources.
OK, and back in 2014, Nigel Farage agreed with the London mayor. Oh, did he now? Nigel used to be in favour of decriminalising these drugs. I'm not sure what his position is. In a GBNews exclusive poll, he says his party have won over Labour's Red Wall and he's their favourite to become the next Prime Minister. He's also got the backing of former critic Elon Musk's dad, Errol.
What he's showing his mettle, you know. Previously, he was a little bit too accommodating, I would say. And he stopped being accommodating, and that's what people want.
Meanwhile, a relative setback for his son Elon as SpaceX faced another rocket explosion last night. The company's 9th test flight of Starship, the most powerful rocket ever to have flown, saw the upper stage explode in the sky.
Is it a good idea, Tom, to change the law because police are targeting ethnic communities for stop and search? It seems a bit of a backward way of looking at it.
I don't think
that surely cannot be a good enough reason to decriminalise a drug that's been illegal for God knows how long, simply because he doesn't approve of the way it's being policed amongst ethnic communities.
Yeah,
if a black guy or an Asian guy or whatever guy is smoking cannabis, well, it's a crime.
Yeah.
Currently, believe it or not.
I think there are many better reasons to decriminalise
so why does it always have to be about
or
racial
legalise
issues?
and regulate. I think it's a strange argument to say that this is all about ethnic minority communities. I think that actually, in some ways, suggests that ethnic minority communities are less law-abiding than non-ethnic minority communities. But I think the wider point here is that we've made a black market in this stuff that is not regulated, that is not safe, that is taking up police time, that is taking up police resources, that could be bringing in tax money.
It seems to turn a blind eye.
Well, I think
walk through my local park and all you can smell is it.
I think, yeah, clearly, and I think that shows that prohibition in this area has failed, and failed badly.
Well, there'd be even more, wouldn't there, if we just said, OK, you can have it, possession is no longer illegal?
I don't think that you get that sense when walking around somewhere like
It's not going to make it better, is it?
DC or New York.
Yeah, but those are...
When going to Lisbon, do you notice that?
But you probably were only walking around the very nice parts of those cities. I imagine if you stumbled across a particularly dodgy suburb, you might have a different opinion. I mean, if you go to some areas in Europe where it is legalised and just seeing all the shops with the cannabis signs, I mean, it does make an area go down market pretty quickly.
I think there are certain areas in Amsterdam, for example, where... certain areas in Amsterdam where sort of it's known for being that area and you've got the red light district and all the rest of it that goes with it. But that doesn't mean that has to be the case everywhere.
Do you want that here? You can just go to the shop and buy it?
I think that if you could go and buy a regulated product where people actually knew what they were getting, where it wasn't the crazy strains of skunk or whatever else has been grown in the attic of someone's house. Can you imagine
Oxford Street in London if cannabis was legalised? You'd literally just have shop front with that green leaf, and it would just be like neon signs.
No.
It's bad enough with the vape shops and the sweet shops and whatever else it is, barber shops. Am I being a prude here?
I completely reject the premise that that you'd have to necessarily have ugly shops. I mean...
Oh, come on. You know it wouldn't be like some nice-looking shop front, would it?
There's a few councils in this country that have followed a marvellous initiative by English Heritage to have traditionalist shop frontage along the high streets of these shops. Have you seen this online?
You're a utopian, though, Tom. That's happening in some areas.
Well,
in other areas, you have the most ugly shop fronts ever.
You can just. I can't
regulation.
I can't believe. Yeah,
you found a regulation you like, Tom.
I've tweeted about this. This is one of. This is one of the. This is one of the areas where I actually.
If you're not following Tom on Twitter,
you're missing out. You get all sorts of.
Tom HFH at.
Oh wow, there you go. It's. I won't use my position here to plug my personal social media too much.
Yes,
but
it's at GBNews. That's where you can find our content.
But what do you think about the proposal to decriminalise small amounts of cannabis? Could it actually make the drug safer? Could it save lives? Could it reduce police time? Or is it going to encourage people
and
to
the
make
idea
bad
that just
health
because
decisions?
Ethnic communities are being targeted for stop and search over possession of drugs, is that a good reason? Anyway, let us know. News headlines with Sophia.
Emily, thank you. Very good afternoon. It's 5 minutes past 12. These are your latest headlines. Well, the Met Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, says he's in favour of putting more details of a suspect in public earlier. This comes after Merseyside police decided to reveal that the suspect arrested on suspicion of ramming a car into crowds at Liverpool's Victory Parade was a white British man. Meanwhile, a man remains in custody after being arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, dangerous driving and drug driving. Merseyside police had up until midday to question the suspect after originally extending their deadline, so we wait to hear a next update. They believe that the 53-year-old driver tailgated an ambulance attending a heart attack patient just before he struck spectators. Water Street did reopen this morning after 65 people were injured in the attack. GB News has spoken to Liverpool fan Jack Trotter, who recalled his experience attending the trophy parade.
Sort of, life or death, sort of just trying to survive, get out of the way of this car. I was able to sort of lock eye contact with him for like half a second. So it was, and then by that time he just tried to floor it and just basically ran right through me, essentially, to be honest with you, trying to kill me, trying to kill everyone else.
Top police and security chiefs are warning the government not to trade safety for space. That's as early prisoner release plans spark alarm. In a joint call, leaders from the Met, MI5 and the National Crime Agency say the move risks public safety and they're demanding serious investment in order to cope. They're warning that out of prison must not mean out of control. Exclusive polling for GB News reveals Reform UK is leading in traditional Labour strongholds. Reform UK has surged to the top of the Red Wall voting intentions, polling at 34%. That's ahead of Labour on 27% and the Conservatives on 22%. Nigel Farage also leads as the preferred Prime Minister, beating Sir Keir Starmer by 3 points. This new polling from Merlin Strategy reveals deep voter frustration on spending, with most Red Wall voters wanting public services funded by cutting welfare, not by raising taxes. GB News spoke to Elon Musk's father, Errol Musk, earlier on this morning to get his views on Mr Farage.
What he's showing his mettle, Previously he was a little bit too accommodating, I would say, and he stopped being accommodating, and that's what people want.
However, speaking to Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary Helen Whately, she seemingly disagreed.
I think if we saw anything from what Nigel Farage set out yesterday, we saw the reason for why we need a Conservative Party. And so what we need is a Conservative Party, because the Conservative Party is the only party that is arguing for the sort of answers that Britain needs to our problems, for sensible economics, for living within our means, for supporting people to take personal responsibility, for lower taxes, for a strong economy, all of those things that really matter to people. And that is the offer that we want to be able to make to people at the next election. Reform's not going to give them that choice, but we will.
The head of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, has opposed the Mayor of London's call to decriminalise some cannabis possession. Sir Sadiq Khan says the current laws on the drug cannot be justified. A new report from the London Drugs Commission, which Mr Khan set up in 2022, argues the UK's approach is out of step and overly punitive. Mr Khan says the evidence now makes a compelling case for reform, and he's urging the government to act. Thames Water has been fined almost £123 million by Ofwat in the largest penalty the water regulator has ever issued. The fines follow 2 investigations that found breaches of their rules. The water giant will now pay £104.5 million for breaches, saying they failed to protect the environment, plus a further £18.2 million for breaking rules related to dividend payments. The regulator has reiterated that the money will be paid by the utility giant and its investors and not by customers. And Signal is finally reaching Scotland's remotest corners, with 4G upgrades bringing reliable mobile coverage to rural areas. 13 upgraded masts now support all major networks, improving connectivity in parts of Argyll, Ayrshire, the Borders and Dumfriesshire. The UK government says the move will transform daily life in communities that have long been left with poor or patchy signal. And SpaceX Starship rocket has spun out of control this morning on its third test flight. This marks its third failure in a row and the latest setback for Elon Musk's ambition to ferry people and cargo to Mars. The rocket began spinning out of control about 30 minutes after its launch due to fuel leaks. That means it broke upon re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. Now, there was hope this would be a successful mission after the explosive failures seen in January and March. But Mr Musk has vowed to pick up the pace with future launches, saying that the next 3 flights will take place every 3 to 4 weeks. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Now it's back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 minutes past midday. Now, a man who allegedly ploughed into a crowd of people at Liverpool's victory parade on Monday remains in custody after being arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, dangerous driving and drug driving.
Yes, Merseyside police believe the 53-year-old tailgated an ambulance attending a heart attack patient just before he struck spectators.
Well, 65 people were injured in the attack, an extraordinary number, including a 7-year-old with a collapsed lung.
OK, well, joining us now is GB News Northwest reporter Sophie Reaper, who's on the scene for us. Sophie, are we expecting a significant update today, then?
I would imagine so, Emily and Tom. Of course, Merseyside police said yesterday in that press conference that they'd applied for an extension to the deadline on how long they could hold that suspect for, and that deadline was midday. So we are now expecting to hear from Merseyside police any time now on whether there are a limited number of options, that either they will have charged that 53-year-old man with something, they will have applied for a further extension, or they would have had to release him if they've not been able to charge him with something. So I would imagine that fairly soon we will receive that update from Merseyside police. Now, we're standing, as you say, here on Water Street in Liverpool city centre, which on Monday around this time, things will have really just been getting going. The party will have just begun. Hundreds of thousands of people making their way into the city centre, donning their red Liverpool kits, ready to celebrate that Premier League victory for Liverpool Football Club this season. However, within a matter of hours, just after 6 o'clock, we saw that harrowing footage of the car ploughing into those crowds of people. And it completely changed the atmosphere here that should have been all about celebrating Liverpool, and instead was quite horrific, the scenes that we saw taking place here in this city. But this is a city that, no matter what happens to it, no matter the adversity that it faces, it always pulls together. We've been speaking to people here today, and they've been telling us that although they're shocked, although they're asking why this happened, that they're not going to let it break them, that they're going to stick together, as Liverpool always does during difficult times.
Well, Sophie Reaper, thanks indeed for bringing us that live from the site of the horror. And, of course, we'll be back with you as we learn more throughout the afternoon, as we surely are expecting to.
Absolutely. But in other news, some of Britain's most senior police chiefs are now warning the government that they will fail to deliver his police reforms without extra funding, and they have a number of other concerns, don't they?
They certainly do. The Met Police Commissioner, Mark Rowley, says that they face a £1.3 billion funding shortfall as they aim to recruit a whole bunch of extra officers, 13,000, into neighbourhood policing. But crucially, this comes at the time of the sentencing review, when the government is proposing releasing criminals, including some violent criminals, early. And Chief Police, including the Met Police Commissioner Mark Rowley, have been very concerned that that early release scheme, that lack of prison for violent criminals, could inevitably mean more police work.
Yeah, they're basically suggesting, aren't they, that the government hasn't really spoken to them, hasn't thought through the impact of just releasing criminals out early. You know, could they go on to re-offend? Well, we know that is the case, don't we? So shall we speak to the former head of volume crime for the Met Police, Kevin Hurley? Kevin, lots of concerns here. Very interesting to hear from very senior figures in the police forces up and down the country on this. The concern that the government hasn't really thought through the impact that releasing people early will have on policing in general. What do you think?
It's chaotic. When you don't listen to the words of the head of the National Crime Agency, the Director General of MI5, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, the Chief Constables in charge of Manchester, West Midlands, Merseyside and West Yorkshire, the largest police forces in the country, and the Chairman of the National Police Chiefs Council on what is going to be the likely outcome of this, then you've got a problem, because when all's said and done, those 9 or 10 people I've mentioned, they are the very heads of these organisations, MI5, National Crime Agency, and if they don't know what they're talking about, we're in trouble. And to give you an example of where we are here, we should not forget the reason the prisons are full is because the police put them there, not the RSPCA. And if the police chiefs are saying, you're going to give us an even worse problem keeping the public safe, don't think it should be listened to. But we've got a problem with this government. What they've said at the moment, and they're really disingenuously spinning the fact that they're going to recruit 16,000 extra police officers to neighbourhood policing. This is false. It's false, untrue. They are talking about funding 3,000 new police officers coming into neighbourhood policing, talking about moving 3,000 that are already overwhelmed into neighbourhood policing, and then talking about recruiting police community support officers, often known as chocolate fire guards by those in the trade, because they've got no powers, or lots of voluntary, unpaid, poorly trained special constables. So I do wish they'd tell the truth and say their actual offer is 3,000 neighbourhood officers.
Yeah.
But of course, the problem you've got is a neighbourhood officer tends to be someone more mature, more experienced, quite frankly, an old boy or an old girl who can speak to people. Well, recruiting a new 3,000 people who are in their 20s are not the ones you want for neighbourhood policing, because they're so full of vim and vigour, they want to rush around, turning up at incidents. So the whole policy in terms of law and order, what Yvette Cooper's up to, is chaotic. And I truly despair when you get to a situation where the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, with nearly 40 years in policing, the most senior person in the country, the head of MI5, the head of the National Crime Agency, and the heads of the largest police forces in the country are saying, for goodness sake, listen to us. And the Commissioner is already saying, I've got to cut by 1,700 people just to balance the books. So I wish they'd stop this spinning and make a decision. Either they're going to fund social benefits, or they're going to fund immigrant hotels, or whatever else they're going to do, illegal immigrant hotels, or whatever else they're going to do, and stop pretending they're going to improve the criminal justice system. Because their talk about introducing tags, for example, is a system that's already broken. They're talking about releasing people from prison with extra supervision. Now, since that supervision is meant to be done by probation, and the head of probation is saying they are overwhelmed and they're broken, this is another falsehood. The only option open to government is to bite the bullet and massively accelerate the speed at which they're going to build new prisons and new camps. And whilst they're at it, they could probably build some residential camps, and I'll call them that, for all these illegal immigrants who are coming in and forcing the government to take money that we should be using on overseas development to stop the spread of terrorism abroad, stop the spread of organised crime, because they're actually taking that money on the quiet and diverting that into paying for the illegal
Kevin, I mean,
immigrants.
you've had a lot to say there. I mean, packed full of no, fantastic to hear. But I mean, the government have just been saying, particularly with regards to the early release scheme, this isn't our fault. The only thing more dangerous than releasing prisoners early is having an absolutely swamped prison system where no one can even find a place in prison. What would you say to that, or do you think that is a spinning as well?
They're absolutely correct. They're absolutely correct. We had a succession of Tory justice ministers who completely messed it up. They have, for 14 years, failed to bite the bullet and build more prison space or come up with other alternatives. And frankly, if the prisons become more and more overcrowded and people can't do any rehabilitation in there, huff for them. The reason why prison works and is good is because when people are in there, they can't burgle people's houses, they can't go around assaulting or abducting people or stealing or dealing drugs. The people I feel sorry for are the prison staff. So I would be looking at seeing them getting an immediate uplift in their pay and conditions, and quite frankly, being given greater weaponry to protect themselves and control the prisons, because we can't have prison staff being assaulted all the times on the wings because they're understaffed and they feel threatened. We have got to change the paradigm and take back control of our prisons. You've got to pay for that. So it comes back again to government. Either be honest with the people and say you have inherited a disaster from the Tories, and we're going to have to change some of our policies.
But the strange thing, Kevin, is that they continually say they have inherited this dire position where not enough prison places have been built. I think it's only around a couple of hundred prison places that were added over the course of the last 14 years, despite the population rising by millions. And yet we had the Justice Minister on this programme last week when the review came about, and we were asking how many more prison places are going to be built by the end of this parliamentary term, and the answer came thousands. And I think that seems to be a little bit under ambitious in terms of the scale of crime. I mean, just to catch up to the per-population prison place numbers that we had even a decade or so ago, you'd need tens of thousands, potentially, of extra prison spaces. I mean, it seems that there is it's just sort of no urgency from the government to get these things expedited, to get them built quickly. But I suppose they're running into so many of the same problems that the previous government had, which was no one wants a new prison, not least a mega prison, near their backyard.
No, you're absolutely right, but we've actually got no choice. And there are huge amounts, and this is an unpopular statement, there are huge amounts of defence estate currently being sold off, old airfields and so on, which could be brought into emergency use by constructing lower security prison, category C, category D prisons, where you could at least deal with some of the immediate urgent crisis. It isn't actually the Labour government's fault, but what is their fault is not now being realistic and saying, we've got a major problem, we've got to stop saying we're going to spend money on net zero or on benefits or whatever else, and say, our duty is to keep the public safe so that commerce can function, so we can get the tax in to pay for everything.
Absolutely. And
so
Kevin, just on that point, Kevin, sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt, because I just want to ask you one more question before we have to go. I'm sure you've seen Sadiq Khan talking about decriminalising cannabis, how that would be a good thing, how ethnic minorities are targeted too much with these drug laws, etc., etc. Just very quickly, your thoughts on that?
First off, ethnic minorities are not targeted specifically with this. Use of cannabis is quite prolific amongst members of the Afro-Caribbean community. So, you know, if you're going to use it tough, you get yourself arrested. It's not because of what you are, it's because of that function. But in fact, you know, there's probably a case to say that local possession and use is a waste of police and court time when we've got this crisis we've just come across, because tobacco and alcohol is far more injurious to a lot more people than cannabis. In fact, sugar is, to be quite honest. It overwhelms
Kevin,
the health service. So,
just to ask for clarification, do the police use the smell of cannabis as an excuse or an easy reason to stop and search someone that they may think might be, I don't know, carrying a weapon or up to no good in another respect, or might have stolen goods but they don't actually have the evidence for that to stop and search? Might they use cannabis as an excuse because they think another law has been broken?
Some may, if they're weak or don't know their job, because the fact is, if you smell cannabis on someone's clothes or coming from a vehicle, then there's likely to be cannabis there. But the only reason why you should stop and search someone for possession of a weapon or unlawful articles or stolen articles is because you've got reasonable excuse to do that. And the way you'll do that is build up, if you like, from that person's presence, why they're where they are, the way they're moving, their body language, the way in which they speak to you, and events that may have gone on around there where you think Yeah, I think I'm justified now in searching this person. And indeed, if they refuse to be searched, I'm justified in using force. So if people, and I know of cases where officers may have said they smelt cannabis because they are lazy or they're weak, don't know the law because they're badly trained, or they can't be bothered to write the real reasons down. The real reasons are, at this particular time of night, we have a kind of problem. This person is not known to me in this area. His movements initially, when I looked at him, were evasive. I thought I saw him conceal something under his jacket. When I've started to speak to him, he's tried to move off and evade me. So my suspicions were building. At which point I said to him, "I'd like to know what's underneath your jacket, please. You need to do that." But you are right. There will have been lazy eyes or cops who will have done such things, and it's completely
And that's the thing. It doesn't have to be
wrong.
invasive. I mean, literally, a police officer just saying, "Please, can I see what's under your jacket?" That could be a 5-second interaction.
Yeah, and then you say, "Oh well, he's only come up to me because I'm black or Asian."
Well,
these things it's so complicated for the police because they get accused of all sorts. Kevin Hurley, we're going to have to leave it there. But thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Former head of volume crime for the Metropolitan Police there, Kevin Hurley. Thank you very much.
Well, shall we continue this conversation on cannabis? Because the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is saying that the current laws cannot be justified.
Yes, he hopes that decriminalising the possession will help build the relationship between police and ethnic minorities.
Shall we see what people on the capital streets, the streets of London, have to say about it?
Marijuana isn't the most vital crime that we're getting,
there's so many people doing it anyway. Like, you just walk around it, you smell it all the time.
So it's kind of already legal in a way. But you keep it illegal.
I would keep it illegal. Yes, I would.
Yeah, I'm not a huge weed marijuana smoker. I had a lot of friends and have a lot of friends that indulge, and they're pretty chill and they have a good time, and that's just what it is.
Well, it's fairly simple. I mean, consenting adults should be able to take risks with their health. And there's also the fact that if you care about harm reduction, criminalizing drugs is just like prohibition all over again. It just drives the product underground, and then you get criminal gangs.
Seems like our interviewer bumped into Dr. Christian Niemitz there, friend of the show.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're going to be speaking to his colleague, Christopher Snowdon, the head of lifestyle economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs. I mean, Christopher, do you agree with every word that your colleague Christian had to say there?
Yes, you found an excellent member of the public to speak to. You seem to know a lot about the topic.
Now, this is, of course, coming back. This is a conversation that often does the rounds. It comes up every couple of years. Some politician says that wouldn't it be better if we decriminalise or even legalise cannabis? And then there's a big row and then nothing happens. But ultimately, there have been some moves, particularly around medical cannabis, and in recent years, the number of American states or indeed European countries that have moved in this direction as well. What do you think the likelihood is that in this country, cannabis will be legalised? Because some people say it effectively is already.
I think it's probably inevitable that it will be legalised, but I think it's equally inevitable that Britain won't be one of the first countries to do it because the politicians seem very nervous about this issue still. I think they're still a little bit scared of the tabloid press. I'm not actually sure that tabloid press are that concerned about it themselves. So I think what will happen is we'll see more and more European countries legalising it. Luxembourg's already recently done so, and other countries are looking at doing the same. When Germany does it, I think that will be a major domino to fall. And once politicians in this country see that not only does it work in North America, it also works in Europe, and governments are getting quite a lot of tax revenue from it, I think the conversation will start to shift.
Don't the bad guys still, try and undercut what you'll be able to pay for the drugs in the shop or whatever? I mean, if it was to be legalised, won't they go for, stronger strains of the drug, jazz it up a bit with other bits and pieces? I mean, it won't be that people who like to take recreational drugs only stick to the legal ones, will it?
No, I mean, clearly, if we're not going to legalise other drugs, then maybe cannabis dealers will move into those other drugs, but they can't actually get people to start taking them And a lot of people do see a significant difference between cannabis and other drugs. It's not really a gateway drug, as some people who support the war on drugs suggests. And you're right that if you tax it too much...
Chris, just on that, it's not a gateway drug, what's the evidence for that? Because, I don't know, you do see a lot of teenagers smoking cannabis, and then they may well go on to, break the seal and then try cocaine and whatever else.
Yeah, and they've probably tried alcohol before that, and they probably tried vaping before alcohol. The people who try one thing tend to try lots of other things, but there are very, very few heroin users, and there are lots and lots of cannabis users. So if it's a gateway, it's not a very effective one. This is just a scaremongering tactic that's been used for a very long time.
Well, I suppose the other argument, Chris, is that, if you are getting cannabis from a dealer, the dealer might offer you all sorts of other illegal things.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go into Boots and ask for some cannabis over the counter from your pharmacist, it's unlikely they're going to slide a bag of cocaine at you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Insofar as there is any kind of connection between cannabis and harder drugs, you kind of sever it by making it distinct and saying, look, we do see these drugs as being different. That's why cannabis is legal and the rest of them aren't.
What about the ick factor, Christopher? I've been to cities and towns around the world where they have cannabis shops left, right and centre. They look even worse than vape shops. You've got the neon lights flashing with the cannabis leaf. It makes the whole area look down market. Chris, do you care about that?
I don't know where you mean specifically. I know there are some places in America where, New York in particular, where people are just selling it all over the place. I don't necessarily believe that would be the way forward. I think you need to have a reasonable, sensible, regulated market. So people are buying it from shops, and you make sure that people are over the age of 18, and so on. But I think you can work with that kind of thing on your own terms. You don't have to do it in any particular way, and people do get annoyed by the smell of it and possibly the sight of it, but that's already absolutely endemic in London as it stands. You kind of wonder how many more people are actually likely to start using cannabis if it's legal. It seems like the market is almost saturated as it is. It's just that government's
I think more
making
people
money
would, because I do think there are still people out there who think I shouldn't do something that's against the law. Surely there are people there who think, oh yeah, I might have cannabis, but actually no, I won't because it's against the law. Those people must exist, Christopher. Surely there would be an increase if it was legal.
If you look what's happened in America, there was a little element of that when it first got legalized. You got people who, prior to the legalization, had been deterred, either because they thought it was immoral to break the law or they were worried about getting caught. And they tried it, but they didn't seem to take it up very much. And so what you've seen in Canada and in various US states is no real increase in overall consumption of cannabis, and in many cases a decline in underage consumption, possibly because there are fewer black market dealers who are prepared to sell to kids, but also possibly because that forbidden fruit aspect of cannabis disappears once it's a load of boomers buying it legally.
Yeah, actually, the cities of this country might have a considerable decrease in the amount of smell of cannabis once it stops being cool.
Oh, I worry about the impact on the brain as well, Christopher, we'll have to leave it there. Christopher Snowdon, Head of Lifestyle Economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Great to have you on this. I do get it'd be good for the exchequer, perhaps.
Yeah.
That's a good point. But would the dealers just undercut with stronger strains?
Yeah, I think people are willing to pay slightly more for a slightly better service. It's like Netflix killed the illegal download market. Yeah. Not because it's cheaper, because it certainly isn't, but because it's just more convenient and above board.
True.
And you're less likely to get a virus.
Should we see what Angela Rayner had to say?
No, that's not the government position, and we're not going to be changing our policy there.
And have you ever taken drugs?
I've taken paracetamol, codeine and all sorts, yes.
Angela Rayner, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there you go, to the point.
Brilliant answer.
She answered the question.
Yeah. Didn't do a definitive list, but of course the Ibiza party queen, that is the Deputy Prime Minister, who does love a party.
Tom.
I'm disappointed that she's taking a stand against Sadiq Khan on this. I would have thought. I can see why, because they're scared about their position in the polls.
I just hate how Sadiq Khan is the narrative that he's building, because ethnic minorities happen to be targeted on. I don't know. Anyway, we've got to get to the news, don't won't we? But after the news, Thames Water have been hit with a record fine. You won't believe how much they've been fined for pumping sewage waste into our waters.
And the new cast has been announced for the HBO Harry Potter TV series. Will they be able to capture the story's magic?
Excellent head of hair there.
Very good afternoon. It's just gone 12:30. These are your latest headlines. Top story, Met Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley says he's in favour of putting more details of a suspect in public earlier. This comes after Merseyside police decided to reveal that their suspect, arrested on the suspicion of ramming a car into crowds at Liverpool's Victory Parade, was a white British man. Meanwhile, a man remains in custody after being arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, dangerous driving and drug driving. Merseyside police did extend their deadline to question the suspect until midday today, but we are still waiting for an update. They believe the 53-year-old driver tailgated an ambulance attending a heart attack patient just before he struck spectators. Wall Street reopened this morning after 65 people were injured in the attack. GB News has spoken to Liverpool fan Jack Trotter, who recalled his experience attending the trophy parade.
Sort of, life or death, sort of just trying to survive, get out of the way of this car. I was able to sort of lock eye contact with him for like half a second. So it was, and then by that time he just tried to floor it and just basically ran right through me, essentially, to be honest with you, trying to kill me, trying to kill everyone else.
Top police and security chiefs are warning the government not to trade safety for space, as early prison release plans spark alarm. In a joint call, leaders from the Met, MI5 and the National Crime Agency, they say that the move risks public safety and they're demanding serious investment to cope. They also warn that out of prison must not mean out of control. Exclusive polling for GB News reveals that Reform UK is leading in traditional Labour strongholds. Reform UK has surged to the top of the Red Wall voting intentions, polling at 34%. That's ahead of Labour on 27% and the Conservatives on 22%. Nigel Farage also leads as the preferred Prime Minister, beating Sir Keir Starmer by 3 points. This new polling from Merlin Strategy reveals deep voter frustration when it comes to spending, with most Red Wall voters wanting public services funded by cutting welfare, not by raising taxes. And the head of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, has opposed the Mayor of London's call to decriminalise some cannabis possession. Sir Sadiq Khan says the current laws on the drug cannot be justified. A new report from the London Drugs Commission, which he set up in 2022, argues the UK's approach is out of step and overly punitive. Mr Khan says the evidence now makes a compelling case for reform and is urging the government to act. Small developers could get a major boost under new government plans to speed up planning and cut red tape. Proposals will see trained planning officers, not local councillors, decide on smaller developments of up to 9 homes, as well as minor and technical applications. The move is part of efforts to help meet Labour's pledge to build 1.5 million homes by 2030. To quickly end with some uplifting news, the UK has already recorded its sunniest spring on record, with 4 days of the season still remaining. The country recorded 360 hours of sunshine from March the 1st until May the 27th, beating the previous sunniest spring in 2020 by 4 hours. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.349 and €1.191. The price of gold is £2,455.63 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,765 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past midday.
It is indeed. And did you notice that a certain Prince Harry flew from LA all the way to Shanghai to apparently promote greener travel?
In hot air balloon, or did he fly in an aeroplane?
I think it was a jet, don't you, Tom?
Right, OK. Well,
There's
Prince
a lot
Harry,
of hot air, though, isn't there?
He's made this surprise visit to China to give a speech highlighting the importance of sustainable travel, with including a subtle dig at the royal family.
Challenges will undoubtedly rise. But if there's one thing that I've learned in my life, it's that meaningful change never comes easily.
Right, now the Times is quite usefully. Now, it's not known what flight Harry did take to China, and Travelist, the company that he's involved with, has declined to share their estimates with this newspaper anyway. But on average, a passenger travelling first class on a return flight from LA to Shanghai produces the equivalent of 6,311.32 kilos of greenhouse gas emissions. That's according to our Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. So that's quite a lot.
611 kilograms.
That's quite a lot. Yeah. And also, I wonder whether he's a bit of a useful idiot as well, going off to China to sort of, I don't know, he's lending his support, isn't he, really, for the way that they're doing things, presumably.
And yet,
at least it looks like that.
I just wish we were doing what China is doing when it comes to energy.
A bit of everything.
They have just this all... They are producing more solar power. By 2030, they will be producing more solar power than the entirety of America produces power of any kind. And that's just solar power. And the majority of China is powered by coal. But they're going all in on nuclear, they're going all in on hydro, they're going all in on solar, they're going all in on gas. I mean, they're just doing everything.
Yeah, which is fantastic, but you have sort of politicians going off there on all expenses paid trips, so coming back singing about how China is this fantastic green utopia and they're so far ahead of us and we should be following China with everything, conveniently ignoring the fact that they're putting a hell of a lot of money into the old fossil fuels as well as the solar farms.
Shall we get the thoughts of the leader of the Climate Party on this, Ed Gemmell? Ed, what do you make of this issue? Because, of course, China is perhaps the number one country in the world when it comes to battery storage and solar panel production and all the rest of it. But a majority of China's energy comes from coal-fired power stations.
And I want to comment on that. Do you mind if we just comment straight away on what Prince Harry did?
Of course.
Let's do that as a start. And maybe let's direct it directly to Prince Harry. Harry, stop being such a hypocrite. Get with the programme. If you're going to talk about it, live it as well. Now, he shouldn't have done that trip. It was ridiculous. He shouldn't have got on. He could have done it on Zoom. And he's reported as now doing 83,000 miles a year, which is going to take 1,000 trees to offset over the course of an entire 12 months. Absolutely ridiculous.
He could fit those trees in his California mansion. We've all seen the garden.
Absolutely. The whole thing, absolutely ridiculous. Shouldn't have done it. I mean, I haven't flown now for, I think, 7 years.
You haven't flown for 7 years?
Oh, my goodness.
But if President Xi, Donald Trump and the Pope rang me up and said, come on, Ed, we need you in a meeting because we're going to save the entire planet and sort out the net zero economy. Will you fly? All right, I'll get on that flight. But otherwise, I'm not getting on another fossil fuel flight. I'll get on it when they're electrical or hydrogen.
Well, we've been speaking about electric planes as well this morning, Ed Gemmell, because they seem to be coming.
They are. No. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, this is the ridiculous thing about what Harry did. What he should be doing is saying, I'm not making that flight. I'll do it on Zoom because I'm waiting for electric. I mean, in Britain at the moment, both electric and hydrogen are starting to get there. Zero Avia at Birmingham Airport at the moment are putting in infrastructure for hydrogen refueling. Yeah. And they're hoping this year to already get flights off the ground, admittedly only 20 passengers, and domestic flights, so flying you over to, Belfast, Glasgow, you can get to Dublin as well. And that'll come now. And they're hoping by 2027 that they'll be flying up to 80 people over to the Mediterranean and other places.
Ed, you haven't flown in 7 years.
Bring his money as well.
I've taken a few flights this year. There's always a spare seat or two. I mean, you're not personally going to make a difference there. It sort of reminds me slightly of Greta Thunberg, who got a bunch of Germans to sail her across the Atlantic to speak at a New York conference. But then the 4 Germans who sailed her there all flew back.
They did.
And so it sort of seems performative at a point.
Well, I think it is, but there's also the starting of a trend to something. And if none of us got on a fossil fuel flight this year, how quickly would Ryanair and British Airways convert to electric planes and hydrogen? We can actually do that. And if they did convert to electric planes and hydrogen, How far ahead would that get Britain in this new net zero economy so we can start...
Or would it be the wrong time to do it? Because we all saw what the EU did when it demanded we change our light bulbs away from incandescent bulbs to those strange tubular things that were around for a few years that took about a year to turn on and never were quite so bright, and they were bad for people with poor eyesight. And then a couple of years later, LEDs came along that are so much cheaper, so much better, and had we not regulated the country to change to these nonsense bulbs in the intermediate stage, perhaps we'd have been faster adopting the better technology that came upon later. Is there not an argument to say that if we force all planes to become hydrogen now, there could be a better technology that comes in 2 or 3 years down the line, and we all look like chumps, we all look like mugs because we're on the worst technology?
There's always that argument, and I completely agree with you, but that's innovation cycles. We've got to force those innovation cycles faster and faster and faster forward. And let's come back to the original thing you set me at the beginning of the interview, and China. As you said, China is romping ahead in this at the moment. It is making all the money, and Britain is not. And the vast opportunities that are coming, I mean, only 2 weeks ago, the London Stock Exchange brought out figures showing the net zero economy is already 7.9 trillion in the world. And for a decade, it's been growing at 15% a year for a decade. Just imagine that growth on our GDP here when we're struggling to do 1%.
Well, isn't there a reason that market's been growing? Because it's had so much subsidy.
Governments have kind of forced it.
Subsidy, but remember, subsidy is really just a matter of carrot and stick. How do you spend your money? If you're earning a lot of money because you've got massive exports, you've clearly got a lot of money then to subsidise things. And if Britain had GDP that was expanding at 10 or 20% a year, don't you think we'd be subsidising? Don't you think we'd be putting more money into research and development to get things going?
Ed, we could talk about the direction of travel, because it does look like net zero is, you know, slowly being put on the back burner. I mean, but we'll get onto that another day because we have run out of time, Ed Gemmell. But I really appreciate your time. Leader of the Climate Party there, and also hasn't taken a flight in 7 years.
Yeah, but some pretty strong words there for Prince Harry, which...
Well, he is just very annoying, isn't he? And also, I don't think people see him as a great intellect. So, you know, he can go to these panels and do these speeches and go on these trips, but is anyone really taking him seriously in what he's saying about net zero?
For someone to be able to be a global figure, coming from where he came from, the
glass ceilings,
the humble origin of this man who, through nothing but sheer intellect and hard work, worked his way up to the global stage, jet-setting around, telling us how to be just as climate conscious as he is. I think
he got a D in his politics A-level.
I got an A-star.
He got a D in his history A-level.
Got an A-star.
He got a C in his English A-level.
Did I take... No, I got an... Yes, I got... No.
Oh, well, Prince Harry's clearly smarter than you, eh?
I can't remember... No. I've genuinely forgotten what A-levels I did.
Well, it clearly didn't mean much to you. But anyway, if you want to travel around the world like Prince Harry, perhaps in a private jet or a first-class seat, here's the travel weather.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Whilst eastern parts of Europe are having some further heavy rain causing some issues here, it's a different story further west. A largely settled picture, a few showery bursts perhaps affecting the Canaries, but likely to avoid most of these. Also largely dry on Thursday across much of Spain and Portugal. A large chunk of Italy having a fine picture, but still some showery rain towards the east, and then a very wet story across more eastern parts, across Greece and Turkey, for example. See you later.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be a day of sunny spells and showers ahead. The odd shower could be heavy. We may even hear the odd rumble of thunder, but for many it's going to be a much brighter day, still feeling warm across the south. And it's all thanks to this ridge of high pressure stretching its way eastwards towards the country through the course of the day. Now, we can't rule out that it's going to be totally dry. There are going to be some showers at times, particularly across the north as they sweep their way eastwards. The odd heavy shower, particularly across eastern areas in the afternoon. And as I say, there may be the odd thunderstorm around, but that should be fairly isolated. For many, it should be a dry and bright day and feeling warm in the sunshine, particularly across the south, highs reaching around 21 to 22 degrees Celsius. Then through into the evening, still once again the odd shower as they sweep their way eastwards, but largely easing away, leading to a largely dry evening across Scotland, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, though we'll start to see some thicker cloud move its way in from the west. And elsewhere across England and Wales, fairly similar, any showers easing away, and it should be mostly dry for a time. But I'm afraid the dry weather isn't sticking around. We're eventually going to see more cloud, outbreaks of rain push its way in from the west, leading to quite a wet start across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England and Scotland by the time we reach Thursday morning. And it could be quite a murky start to the day as well, some quite low cloud drifting in from the west, so quite a murky and foggy start for many. But the cloud and rain does mean it's going to keep temperatures up, so it should be a largely mild start. But a fairly unsettled day ahead, outbreaks of rain for many, particularly across the north, where it could turn quite heavy and blustery through much of the day, and still some outbreaks of rain across parts of Wales, easing as we head into the afternoon, staying largely dry and bright across the southeast, where it will be warm, but for many it's going to be an unsettled day ahead with outbreaks of rain. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. In Wakefield, the M62 westbound at junction 32A is down to one lane due to barrier repairs. Knowsley's M57 southbound exit at junction 1 is closed for emergency roadworks. Solihull's M6 northbound between junctions 4 and 6 is down to one lane. The M45 eastbound in Warwickshire is closed for repairs. The M1 southbound in Hertfordshire has lane restrictions between junctions 6 and 5. Major lane closures affect the M25 anti-clockwise in Surrey between junctions 9 and 7. In Devon, the M5 southbound at junction 31 has one lane blocked for drain works. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 51 minutes past midday. And I've got to say, I got into a muddle about my A-level results. No, a muddle. I completely said the wrong thing. It was English and politics I got A stars in,
right,
and history I got an A in. Whereas I got muddled between my history and my English.
Did you get your history remarked?
But I didn't. I kind of wish I did.
I wish you had.
But it was English, politics and history, which were exactly the same 3 A-levels, apparently, that Prince Harry took. Who knew?
Yes, although... Yes, I'm not sure if that's true. We're going to fact-check that from Prince Harry.
Oh, yeah.
Because I would have thought he would have chucked in a bit of art history in there. That's usually what the royals do, isn't it? Anyway. So, yes, Tom...
You didn't do
Tom
3,
was shafted.
You did 5.
I did 5, well, 4.5, which is ridiculous, and no one should do that, OK?
What were yours?
A mixture of A's and A stars, Tom, of course. Anyway, let's stop tooting our own horns here. This was a long time ago. Long time ago.
Well,
and
exactly.
they're easier these days, anyway.
They're easier these days, and they're not even numbers anymore. You can't get an A star in an A level anymore, because they're numbers 1 to 7, I think.
Is it 1 to 9?
1 to 9, I've just been told in my ear.
Yes, there are younger people in our ears, clearly.
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome back. That's enough about exam results. Let us know if you did your A-levels. What did you get? Anyway, HBO has announced the young actors who will play the lead trio in its TV series adaptation of J.K. Rowling's book series, Harry Potter.
Yes, the young cast includes Arabella Stanton, Dominic McLaughlin and Alistair Stout, who've been cast as Hermione Granger, Harry Potter and Ron Weasley.
Oh, look at that tufty red hair. Fantastic for Ron.
I'm actually kind of looking forward to this show.
Yeah.
But should we get the thoughts of Showbiz editor at the Daily Star, Ed Gleave? Ed, why the remake quite so soon after the original film series?
Well, I think it actually has been quite a long time. It's been about a decade since the last film. And I think also what this will bring to the table is a much more sort of rounded look at the books and an adaptation of them, because each book will be a multiple episode series. So I think lots had to be cut out to make the films. 2 or 3 hours long, whereas the series will be able to include a lot more detail about what happens in the book.
Ed, are the three children here actually actors? Because wasn't it in the original Harry Potter that they just sort of went around nice schools and got kids who had, very nice accents?
Did they?
Yeah, I think so. They weren't actors before. Neither were the original cast, anyway.
So these two of them, I think, have got pretty impressive resumes for their age. So Arabella was in Matilda in the West End, and the West End is pretty tough, I suppose. Dominic was in a production of Macbeth. Alistair has been in a potato advert, so I suppose he's
Sorry, is Alistair Ron?
Yes.
That fits so perfectly to the character types.
But they had 32,000 audition tapes. So it sounds as though they've gone on quite the mission to find their best three. And also, I think...
Absolutely. Well, they look adorable. Egley, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm terribly sorry. Hopefully we'll speak again. This is Good Afternoon Britain. Lots more coming up on the show. Yes, we are going to be speaking more about policing, but we have to get to the weather.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be a day of sunny spells and showers ahead. The odd shower could be heavy. We may even hear the odd rumble of thunder. But for many, it's going to be a much brighter day, still feeling warm across the south. And it's all thanks to this ridge of high pressure stretching its way eastwards towards the country through the course of the day. Now, we can't rule out that it's going to be totally dry. There are going to be some showers at times, particularly across the north as they sweep their way eastwards. The odd heavy shower, particularly across eastern areas in the afternoon. And as I say, there may be the odd thunderstorm around, but that should be fairly isolated. For many, it should be a dry and bright day and feeling warm in the sunshine, particularly across the south, highs reaching around 21 to 22 degrees Celsius. Then through into the evening, still once again the odd shower as they sweep their way eastwards, but largely easing away, leading to a largely dry evening across Scotland and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, though we'll start to see some thicker cloud move its way in from the west. And elsewhere across England and Wales, fairly similar, any showers easing away, and it should be mostly dry for a time. But I'm afraid the dry weather isn't sticking around. We're eventually going to see more cloud, outbreaks of rain push its way in from the west, leading to quite a wet start across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England and Scotland by the time we reach Thursday morning. And it could be quite a murky start to the day as well, some quite low cloud drifting in from the west, so quite a murky and foggy start for many. But the cloud and rain does mean it's going to keep temperatures up, so it should be a largely mild start. But a fairly unsettled day ahead, outbreaks of rain for many, particularly across the north where it could turn quite heavy and blustery through much of the day, and still some outbreaks of rain across parts of Wales, easing as we head into the afternoon, staying largely dry and bright across the southeast where it will be warm, but for many it's going to be an unsettled day ahead with outbreaks of rain. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning.
You could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with skyroof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
What can you say about it? Has it lasted time? It was Slade in Flame.
Yeah.
Was it about Slade?
No, it was an amalgamation of lots of bands that we knew. The director and the writer, Richard Longcrane and Andrew Birkin, they sent us the script as a script originally, and we said, oh, bands don't behave like this in real life. So we decided to take them to America on tour for a month. So they saw what it was like really behind the scenes of a rock band. And we told them stories of what we knew about other bands, plus ourselves, and they amalgamated that into the film. So every scene in the film is true, not to Slade.
Result?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Mind you, when it come out in '75, the critics were great to it, but the fans didn't like it.
Yeah.
It was too heavy duty for the fans because it wasn't a comedy film like they expected from a happy-go-lucky band like we
But
were.
you did that on purpose, though.
We did it on purpose.
To make a
we
film
didn't
like
want to
all
make
the
it.
other. Dave Clark 5 had done Catch Us If You Can, Hard Day's
We
Night.
know, it was all that. Yeah.
They were all
there were
fun
lots
films,
out there.
weren't they? Yeah.
We wanted to go totally the other way because nobody expected us to do that.
Yeah.
Of course, the fans thought, whoa, what's
But
this?
were you worried, though, at that time? Because
Of course.
Well, hold on, maybe we've made a mistake here.
Of course. When it come out in America, they had to put subtitles on.
Oh, really?
Because they couldn't understand our accents. But 50 years on now, it's just gained momentum.
Yeah.
It's now become a real classic of the rock movie genre. It's Mark Kermode who gave it the title Citizen Kane of rock movies, which is a great accolade for us. Plus, the movie is great. The movie soundtrack is great as well.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the 28th of May. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, Merseyside police continue to question the suspected driver of the car that ploughed into a crowd during Liverpool's Premier League Champions Parade. We'll bring you updates.
As the streets where the incident took place reopens, the city of Liverpool is still reeling as they ask themselves how and why this happened.
Meanwhile, the UK's most senior police officer, Sir Mark Rowley, supports officers sharing more details about suspects with the public earlier in cases such as this. Take a listen.
Content will be all over social media very, very quickly. People will be making guesses and inferences. I think in that world, putting more facts out is the only way to deal with it.
And senior policing chiefs are warning Sir Keir Starmer that he will fail to deliver on his crime pledges if he continues to press ahead with his early release scheme. They warn police forces will simply not be able to cope with the inevitable increase in crime.
But could their jobs be made easier were cannabis to be legalised? Well, Sadiq Khan is urging the government to decriminalise small quantities of the drug to stop ethnic communities being targeted and free up police resources.
Fun fact for you, back in 2014, Nigel Farage agreed with the London mayor. I'm not sure what he thinks now, though, but a GBN exclusive poll says his party, Reform UK, have won over Labour's Red Wall, and he's their favourite to become the next Prime Minister now. He's also got the backing of former critic Elon Musk's dad, Errol.
What he's showing his mettle, you know. Previously, he was a little bit too accommodating, I would say, and he stopped being accommodating, and that's what people want.
Meanwhile, a setback. Yes, this Starship launch faced an explosion late last night. The company's 9th test flight of Starship, the most powerful rocket ever flown, of course owned by Elon Musk. Well, it saw the upper stage explode in the sky.
What's the upper stage? Is it just the bit at the top?
So the Starship is made of two parts.
Just got told I'm correct.
There's the booster, the super heavy booster, which is
that what they call it? The
super heavy booster. Because basically, with a rocket, you don't want to be getting the whole thing up into the sky when sort of most of the booster is just fuel, and the heavy lifting that you need to do is to get to the edge of the Earth's atmosphere. Then you can drop that bit. If you remember the Saturn V rocket splits into multiple stages because you want to get rid of the dead weight as soon as possible so that the top bit can continue to go. Yeah. And with the Saturn V, it was only this tiny little bit at the top. It's less usual because Starship is just two parts. So you've got the super heavy booster, which itself is the size of a skyscraper. I mean, this thing is massive.
Really?
And so that bit comes down and it's
the size of a skyscraper.
Yeah, and it gets caught by something called Mechazilla, which is this this launch tower with two arms that you might have seen that come out and catch the booster as it lands. But then the upper stage, that's the bit that is supposed to land on the moon or on Mars or wherever, and that goes up and continues into space. But they've been really struggling with the upper stage, the Starship bit of Starship.
That's the bit that exploded.
Yes, well, that's the bit that exploded accidentally. They did deliberately explode the super heavy booster as well.
But it's fine, because no one's on board.
No one's on board. This is a test flight. This is the 9th test flight of the most powerful rocket that has ever been
I love
known
how
to man.
people who don't like Elon Musk, they scoff and they say, you can't even get a rocket up. I mean, can you get a rocket up? I mean, he's doing, you know, it's literally rocket science. Yes, it's literally rocket science.
Not exactly brain surgery, is it? But I think
the great physicist Tom Harwood.
You compare this to the SLS, the space launch system that NASA has been struggling to develop for the best part of the last 20 years, and they haven't had a single test flight of that. Whereas the way that Elon Musk developed his rockets is messy. It was the same with the Falcon 9, which is now the most reliable rocket ever constructed. But while that was being developed, the thing exploded all the time. But that's the point.
Well,
SpaceX.
If I were a tech whiz billionaire, my Starship would always get into the sky without any problems.
But that's the point. How do you make sure that you need to push the boundaries each and every time, find where it fails, and then build the next one?
Well, we're pushing the boundaries with this show today. We've got to get to the headlines, don't we? It's Sophia Hill.
Emily, thank you. Very good afternoon. It's just gone 1 o'clock. These are your latest headlines. Met Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley says he's in favour of putting more details of a suspect in public earlier. This comes after Merseyside police decided to reveal that the suspect arrested on suspicion of ramming a car into crowds at Liverpool's Victory Parade was a white British man. Meanwhile, a man remains in custody after being arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, dangerous driving and drug driving. Merseyside police had until midday today to question the suspect after extending their deadline, but we're still expecting an update. Water Street has reopened this morning after 65 people were injured in the attack. GB News spoke to Liverpool fan Jack Trotter, who recalled his experience attending the trophy parade.
Sort of, life or death, sort of just trying to survive, get out of the way of this car. I was able to sort of lock eye contact with him for like half a second. So it was, and then by that time he just tried to floor it and just basically ran right through me, essentially, to be honest with you, trying to kill me, trying to kill everyone else.
Top police and security chiefs are warning that the government not to trade safety for space. That's as early prisoner release plans are sparking alarm. In a joint call, leaders from the Met, MI5 and the National Crime Agency say the move risks public safety and they're demanding serious investment in order to cope. They also warn that out of prison must not mean out of control. Exclusive polling for GB News reveals that Reform UK is leading in traditional Labour strongholds. Reform UK has surged to the top of the Red Wall voting intentions, polling at 34%. That's ahead of Labour on 27% and the Conservatives on 22%. Nigel Farage also leads as the preferred Prime Minister, beating Sir Keir Starmer by 3 points. This new polling from Merlin Strategy reveals deep voter frustration when it comes to spending, with most Red Wall voters wanting public services funded by cutting welfare, not by raising taxes. GB News spoke to Elon Musk's father, Errol Musk, this morning to get his views on Mr Farage.
What he's showing his mettle, Previously he was a little bit too accommodating, I would say, and he stopped being accommodating, and that's what people want.
However, speaking to Shadow Work and Pension Secretary Helen Whately earlier, she seemingly disagreed.
I think if we saw anything from what Nigel Farage set out yesterday, we saw the reason for why we need a Conservative Party. And so what we need is a Conservative Party, because the Conservative Party is the only party that is arguing for the sort of answers that Britain needs to our problems, for sensible economics, for living within our means, for supporting people to take personal responsibility, for lower taxes, for a strong economy, all of those things that really matter to people. And that is the offer that we want to be able to make to people at the next election. Reform's not going to give them that choice, but we will.
The head of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, has opposed the Mayor of London's call to decriminalise some cannabis possession. Sir Sadiq Khan says the current laws on the drug cannot be justified. A new report from the London Drugs Commission, which he set up in 2022, argues that the UK's approach is out of step and overly punitive. Mr Khan says the evidence now makes a compelling case for reform and is urging the government to act. Thames Water has been fined almost £123 million by Ofwat in the largest penalty the water regulator has ever issued. The fines follow 2 investigations that found breaches of their rules. The water giant will now pay £104.5 million for breaches saying they failed to protect the environment, plus a further £18.2 million for breaking rules related to dividend payments. The regulator has reiterated that the money will be paid by the utility giant and its investors and not by its customers. Now, a review has found that London's Heathrow Airport responded well to the major power outage in March that forced it to shut down for almost a day. Former Transport Minister Ruth Kelly, who led the review, says that Britain's biggest hub did respond well on the day and confirms that they were able to restore full operation smoothly on the next day. Ms Kelly went on to add that through the review they have learnt a number of lessons and they've now made recommendations on how Heathrow Airport can enhance its incident responses. And Spaceship's ex-Starship rocket spun out of control during its 3rd test flight today. This marks the 3rd failure in a row and the latest setback for Elon Musk's ambition to ferry people and cargo to Mars. The rocket began spinning out of control about 30 minutes after its launch due to a fuel leak, which meant it broke upon re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. There was hope that this would be the successful mission after explosive failures seen in January and March. Mr Musk has now vowed to pick up the pace with future launches, saying that the next 3 flights will take place every 3 to 4 weeks. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour, but now it's back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 10 minutes past 1.
It is.
I'm really, really glad that we got that important clarification out there.
You can read the time.
Well, now, a man who allegedly ploughed into a crowd of people at Liverpool's Victory Parade on Monday remains in custody after being arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, dangerous driving and drug driving.
Yes, Merseyside police believe the 53-year-old driver tailgated an ambulance attending a heart attack patient just before he struck spectators.
Well, joining us now is GB News Northwest reporter Sophie Reaper at the scene of where it all unfolded. Sophie, what can you tell us?
Well, Tom and Emily, we are expecting an update from Merseyside police any time now. Of course, the time running out for that deadline for them to either charge, extend the deadline, or to release that 53-year-old man who they're holding under suspicion of the charges you just mentioned there. Now, this street's only reopened this morning. Of course, on Monday it was the scene of much celebration and much joy. That was until the incident took place, which has horrified and shocked this very proud city. And if you want an example of just how proud this city is and just how strong its spirit is, in the last few moments, the boss of Liverpool's other football club, Everton, their manager, David Moyes, has just come out in the last few moments and said that the community here in this city is what makes it so special. So that's really quite strong from their rivals' manager to come out and make those comments about the Liverpool and its clubs and just how strong that sense of community is here. Now, we've been here all morning speaking to people and finding out their thoughts, and I think one big part is that they're just so shocked about how and why that was allowed to happen. You mentioned there that Merseyside police revealed at that press conference yesterday they understand that Ford Galaxy was able to gain access to Water Street by tailgating an ambulance who was attending the scene to try and treat a man suffering from a heart attack, and that's how he was able to get onto the street, the man alleged to have carried out that incident. But the real big question that people here in Liverpool have is why, and that is what's going to be asked over the coming days and weeks as people really are left reeling by this incident that has shocked this proud city.
OK, well, Sophie Reaper, thank you very much indeed for being there in Liverpool. Do bring us any updates as and when you get them. Joining us now to discuss, well, this is Very interesting what the Met Police Commissioner Mark Rowley has said today surrounding the early release of information about the suspect. And our Home and Security editor, Mark White, is here to tell us more. Yes, Mark Rowley essentially saying that it was the right decision to release the information, ethnicity, age, gender of the suspect at that early stage, and we should continue to do so.
I think, yes, his instincts are, given the digital age that we are in, where you have social media and, of course, people posting information that's either true or half true, that just adds to the sort of rumour mill and potentially can heighten tensions. His instincts are to get information out there, even, interestingly, if it's information that isn't pointing to the fact that someone is white British, that might be perhaps a bit more controversial in nature, that they might not be white British, for instance, and that there would be some in society who would seek to capitalise on that.
For example, if the name, I guess it wouldn't be a name, but if someone was of a Muslim name or Asian background, people might assume, oh, terror attack or something like that.
But I think he acknowledges, and, you know, he's mature enough and level-headed enough to realise there are upsides and downsides to whatever you do here. The upside, of course, of coming and revealing as much information as you can, not necessarily a name, but certainly ethnicity and perhaps religion, their immigration status, something like that. The upside is that you're not going to be accused of hiding information. It could, of course, lead to some tensions and unrest, but there's always a flip side of that. If you don't release that information, then people will get half-truths, people will get angry, people will believe there's a cover-up, as they did with the likes of Southport, and you will get exactly the kind of unrest that you're hoping to avoid. This is what Sir Mark told the Today programme on Radio 4 this morning.
In general, I think we have to be realistic and more often put more personal details in public earlier. I think the reason for that, I think it creates all sorts of practical problems. We're in such an age of citizen journalism. People have screenshots, phones. Some content will be all over social media very, very quickly. People will be making guesses and inferences. I think in that world, putting more facts out is the only way to deal with it.
So he's clear, putting more facts out is the only way to deal with it. But let's just wait until, you know, God forbid some horrific event happens again, and maybe the person who is a key suspect is not white British. Will that police force concerned get that information out there in a timely manner to the public? We would hope so. The precedent, it seems, has been set by Merseyside Police on this occasion. So let's see what happens. And
I suppose the big concern here is that, of course, the police would love a trial to take place in a vacuum. But that's not the world in which we live. And even 20 years ago, they could pretty much make sure that the monopoly of information that there was through rigorous broadcast and print and all the rest of it. Now with social media, there is going to be speculation. There are likely going to be pictures shared, video of whatever instant it might be in the future that then lead to further speculation. So trying to make that vacuum of information as small as possible has surely got to be an imperative.
Well, yes. I mean, there has always been a sort of risk of prejudice with all of these big high-profile events and arrests that have followed, and that will always be the case. But I think, actually, the risk of seriously prejudicing a criminal trial at some point in the future is practically non-existent. I've been to many, many trials in the past. The judges always tell the jury, judge this case on the facts before you. Noises off in the past, what you may have seen and read, are not relevant to this. And we know that in the past, we've had newspapers, for instance, printing lots of background about people that have been arrested, charged with horrific events about their past, about what people have said about them in their past. Now it's the social media where lots of that information is going. In the past, it was splashed all over the tabloids. but people still got a fair trial at the end of the day, because you're talking many, many months down the road before we ever get a trial, and those warnings that go to the jury anyway.
Just very quickly, what do you expect will happen today? Sophie Reaper there saying that the police don't have much time left to decide whether to charge, whether to extend the deadline, or whether to release the suspect. Will that have happened by the end of the day, do you imagine?
I would imagine so. You can extend it to 48 hours.
Right.
If he was being held under terrorism legislation, of course it can be extended out to 2 weeks, but he's not being held on suspicion of terrorism charges. So let's just see what the police come up with by the end of the day. I think the likelihood is we'll get some kind of charge decision at some point.
OK, well, we wait for that. Thank you very much indeed, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor.
Now, some of Britain's most senior police chiefs have warned that the government will fail to deliver their police funding reform without extra funding.
Yes, Met Police Commissioner Mark Rowley says they face a £1.3 billion shortfall in funding, aiming to recruit 13,000 additional officers into neighbourhood policing. But we've also got the issue, don't we, Tom, of the early release scheme. Now, this is something that a lot of these very senior people, MI5, National Crime Agency, Mark Rowley, etc., are very, very worried about. They don't feel like they're being listened to.
Absolutely. They say the government hasn't taken account of the extra burden it will place on policing as a result of their early release scheme, piling extra pressure on policing and requiring perhaps even more officers than the understaffed departments have at present.
Well, should we see what Chris Phillips has to say, former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office? Chris, thank you very much. It seems rather alarming, as a member of the public, to hear that, you know, the MI5, National Crime Agency, Mark Rowley, all of these senior figures who know what they're talking about, haven't been, or at least are saying that they haven't been really consulted on all of this.
Well, yes, and the criminal justice system, and in particular the police, have been underfunded now for 12, 15 years. And the end result of that is that we have streets have very few police officers on them, and our prisons are full to bursting. And it's an impossible situation. It's been allowed to get like this over a generation. And now it's all, you know, the police officers are coming out and saying, look, this is no longer acceptable. We can't have reduced resources. We need to have enough people to do the job that you want us to do.
This is all, of course, in the context of what has been, in the eyes of much of the public, a sort of breakdown in law and order. The amount of theft that has been rising, the sense of control. And I suppose one of the reasons why the government was so keen to put forward its neighbourhood policing plan is that people just want a visible presence of police on the streets. But if alongside that new neighbourhood policing plan, whether it is funded or unfunded or somewhere in between, if then the priority of punishment is not prison, but in the community, people with tags on their legs or perhaps just people who authorities want to keep an eye on in the community, that surely is an extra demand on resources that are already thin and already tight.
Yeah, and Tom, to be quite frank, police officer numbers are supposed to be going up. They're actually going down. The number of people officers leaving the force is more than that joining at the moment. So this is all pie in the sky. You know, I think we're all, as members of the public, being treated as mugs. We know that there's more crime now than there ever has been in the past. The vast majority of that is not being reported. And unfortunately, the government are unwilling or unable to fund the people that we want to do the job to keep us safe.
Well, Chris Phillips, thank you very much indeed, former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Do you think it's an important point about the crime that is not being reported? I mean, so many events must happen and people just won't bother to go to the police after their phone's been swiped or they've been harassed on the street or whatever it might be. Oh,
absolutely, and if they do, it's usually just to get the insurance or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, a setback for Elon Musk, or is it, as SpaceX faced another rocket explosion last night?
And London Mayor Sadiq Khan wants to legalise small amounts of cannabis. But why does he want to do it? We'll find out next and we'll debate it.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Nigel is back.
Good evening.
Unfiltered.
Are these proposals bold enough?
Uncompromising.
Will it bring growth?
Unmissable.
We as a country are brilliant.
Nigel Farage returns this Tuesday from 7 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we're in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 25 minutes past 1. Now, the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, Sir Sadiq, has voiced support for decriminalising small amounts of natural cannabis, arguing that the current laws are no longer justifiable.
Yes, this is interesting. He believes the move could help rebuild trust between police and ethnic minorities. But critics raise concerns. Could decriminalisation lead to increased use and higher rates of cannabis dependency?
Well, joining us to debate this is the Dorset Police and Crime Commissioner David Sidwick and the former Drugs Minister Norman Baker. OK, Norman, you're backing a change to the law. Why?
There's a number of reasons. When I was a minister, we carried out an international comparator study looking at policy in different countries. And what was quite clear from that study was that those countries who treat drug use generally as a health issue were actually reducing drug use, whereas those who had a very harsh policy, a law and order policy on it, actually saw an increase in drug use. That may be counterintuitive, but that's actually what was shown. The second thing is we've now got on the streets and in our prisons, unfortunately, a great deal of skunk, which is much more damaging than natural cannabis, which I think is what the mayor's talking about. And what they've done in Uruguay, which is the first country to decriminalise and legalise, in fact, cannabis use for personal recreational purposes in small quantities, was to actually regulate the quality and make sure that very harmful versions of cannabis were not available or were actually still illegal, driving people towards less harmful varieties, which were then state controlled. And by the way, they were dispensed through state operations, state shops, if you like, which means it was an income stream for the government in Uruguay, enabling them to spend that money on clamping down on really dangerous drug use.
OK, well, David Sidgwick, you're the Police and Crime Commissioner of Dorset. Do you think that doing what Sadiq Khan is saying would make Dorset safer or less safe?
I think it would absolutely make it less safe, and there's a number of reasons for that. Look, what you've got to remember is what cannabis is. It's a drug, and what we're talking about here is something which actually is a genetic toxin. So there has been a lot of work done since 2016, new data. I'm actually publicising a medical textbook which has come out about this. And this shows in those countries where it has been legalised, it shows an increase in things like birth defects, cancer, those sorts of issues. So from a health point of view, I don't think this stacks up. But from a, if you like, market point of view, cannabis is the entry drug. It used to be the only one. Now we have vapes ahead of it. But what it means is that you'll start on cannabis, and then when you want a new high, you'll gravitate to something else. So the idea that you would legislate for 10% doesn't work. And
what about the policing angle, David? What about the policing angle? Sadiq Khan saying that there should be a change in law in part because ethnic minorities are targeted for stop and search. I mean, is that a reason to change the law?
No, that's not a reason to change the law. I mean, stop and search is a good tool. It's a good tool that keeps us safe. What we have to do is make certain it is done in the right way and how it is done, and is done legitimately.
It's a good tool that keeps us safe from knives and machetes and perhaps firearms. I mean, no one's being kept safe from 1 gram of cannabis.
But what you're being kept safe from is you're being kept safe from the illegality of the drug itself. So Dorset police, the police generally don't stop and search people for cannabis. They haven't done that for ages for the smell of cannabis. But you have to be able to search people for illegal drugs because you want to take off the streets the dealers. Now,
well, that makes it sound like you're slightly in favour of what Sadiq Khan is proposing there, in terms of not small amounts, but perhaps larger dealing. So we will come back to you in just a moment, David, but let's go over to Norman now just to respond to some of what you've heard.
Well, first of all, I'm not suggesting that police shouldn't be able to stop people, and drug dealers in particular, but what I'm keen to do is to separate the drug dealers from the users. And actually, at the moment, people who want to access cannabis are going to drug dealers who may well want to push them onto different drugs. If you actually legalise it and have a state-controlled system, then you separate the user from the drug dealer. Secondly, I don't actually accept the arguments that have been put about the link with cancer and so on. I just don't accept that. I mean, we've got evidence from Portugal, for example, for over 20 years. Cannabis was decriminalised in Portugal in 2002. And the evidence from Portugal over 20 years is that health impacts have reduced as a consequence of that particular policy. Thirdly, in terms of the police, we just heard on your previous snatch on the programme a moment ago how the police are being stretched. There aren't enough police officers. I don't want police officers chasing people for minute elements of cannabis when they should be dealing with more serious crime.
Yeah, I take your point.
Nor do I want people in prison for cannabis use when we've got overcrowded prisons.
But just to bring David back into that, because, I mean, I'm not a police officer, obviously I have no experience of policing, but how are you supposed to know whether someone who's smoking a spliff openly in the park is dealing or just smoking recreationally? And isn't the police about making things comfortable for law-abiding people? And most people, I'd hazard a guess, don't want people high and stoned just walking around their local area.
Well, look, you're absolutely right. I mean, the problem here is that we need 3 things. You need tough enforcement, you need good treatment and recovery, you need prevention. And we need to actually do a lot more about education and awareness, because that's the way that you stop people taking drugs in the first place. But I just want to pick up on the point about Uruguay, because that's been mooted as this wonderful place. I know that the Home Affairs Select Committee went to Uruguay to look at it, and they saw exactly what would happen here. If you try and legalise for 10%, what will the bad guys do? They will sell you 20%. They will sell you 30%. It would be a bit like you saying, everybody will now only drink light beer. People are going to want more. They're going to extend that. And in fact, the drug dealers want you to do that. The drug dealers want you on cocaine, they want you on heroin, they want you to move through cannabis to these other areas. Now, the way to do it, the way to sort this is to have better diversion when a police officer sees somebody with cannabis and its possession. But there is still an intervention, and you still have it as illegal.
There is so much more to discuss here. I wish we had more time because I think it's such an interesting issue, but I'm afraid we're going to have to get to the news headlines. So David Sidgwick and Norman Baker, thanks indeed for joining us, and thank you both for your contributions.
It's one of those ones where, you know, the arguments on both sides sort of make sense, but it's just whether what you feel in your heart a little.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up. Yes, a Christian woman who fled Islamic persecution to seek asylum in the UK says she and her family essentially received the death penalty from our Home Office. Well, we'll hear from her next. But first, the news with Sophia.
Emily, thank you. Very good afternoon. It's just gone 1:30. These are your latest headlines. Top story, the Met Commissioner Samart Rowley says he's in favour of putting more details of a suspect in public earlier. This comes after Merseyside police decided to reveal that the suspect arrested on suspicion of ramming a car into crowds at Liverpool's Victory Parade was a white British man. Meanwhile, a man remains in custody after being arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, dangerous driving and drug driving. Merseyside police had until midday today to question the suspect after extending their own deadline, but we're still awaiting an update. Water Street has now reopened after the 65 people were injured in the attack. GB News spoke to Liverpool fan Jack Trotter, who recalled his experience attending the trophy parade.
Sort of, you know, life or death, sort of just trying to survive, you know, get out of the way of this car. I was able to sort of lock eye contact with him for like half a second. So it was, and then by that time he just tried to floor it and just basically ran right through me, essentially, to be honest with you, trying to kill me, trying to kill everyone else.
Top police and security chiefs are warning the government not to trade safety for space as early prison release plans spark alarm. In a joint call, leaders from the Met, MI5 and the National Crime Agency say the move risks public safety and they're demanding serious investment in order to cope. They also warn that out of prison must not mean out of control. Exclusive polling for GB News reveals that Reform UK is leading in traditional Labour strongholds. Reform UK had surged to the top of the Red Wall voting intentions, polling at 34%. That's ahead of Labour on 27% and the Conservatives on 22%. Nigel Farage also leads as preferred Prime Minister, beating Sir Keir Starmer by 3 points. This new polling from Merlin Strategy reveals deep voter frustration when it comes to spending, with most Red Wall voters wanting public services funded by cutting welfare, not by raising taxes. GB News spoke to Elon Musk's father, Errol, this morning on his views on Mr Farage.
What he's showing his mettle, you know. Previously he was a little bit too accommodating, I would say, and he stopped being accommodating, and that's what people want.
And a review has found that London's Heathrow Airport responded well to the major power outage in March that forced it to shut down for almost a day. Former Transport Minister Ruth Kelly, who led the review, said that Britain's biggest hub did respond well on the day and confirmed that they were able to restore full operations smoothly the very next day. Ms Kelly went on to add that through the review they have learnt a number of lessons and they've now made recommendations on how Heathrow Airport can enhance its incident responses. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.347 and 1.190 euros. The price of gold is £2,459.13 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,773 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be a day of sunny spells and showers ahead. The odd shower could be heavy. We may even hear the odd rumble of thunder, but for many it's going to be a much brighter day, still feeling warm across the south. And it's all thanks to this ridge of high pressure stretching its way eastwards towards the country through the course of the day. Now, we can't rule out that it's going to be totally dry. There are going to be some showers at times, particularly across the north as they sweep their way eastwards. The odd heavy shower, particularly across eastern areas in the afternoon. And as I say, there may be the odd thunderstorm around, but that should be fairly isolated. For many, it should be a dry and bright day and feeling warm in the sunshine, particularly across the south, highs reaching around 21 to 22 degrees Celsius. Then through into the evening, still once again the odd shower as they sweep their way eastwards, but largely easing away, leading to a largely dry evening across Scotland and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, though we'll start to see some thicker cloud move its way in from the west. And elsewhere across England and Wales, fairly similar, any showers easing away, and it should be mostly dry for a time. But I'm afraid the dry weather isn't sticking around. We're eventually going to see more cloud, outbreaks of rain push its way in from the west, leading to quite a wet start across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England and Scotland by the time we reach Thursday morning. And it could be quite a murky start to the day as well, some quite low cloud drifting in from the west, so quite a murky and foggy start for many. But the cloud and rain does mean it's going to keep temperatures up, so it should be a largely mild start. But a fairly unsettled day ahead, outbreaks of rain for many, particularly across the north where it could turn quite heavy and blustery through much of the day, and still some outbreaks of rain across parts of Wales, easing as we head into the afternoon, staying largely dry and bright across the southeast where it will be warm, but for many it's going to be an unsettled day ahead with outbreaks of rain. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. In Wakefield, the M62 westbound at junction 32A is down to one lane due to barrier repairs. Knowsley's M57 southbound exit at junction 1 is closed for emergency roadworks. Solihull's M6 northbound between junctions 4 and 6 is down to one lane. The M45 eastbound in Warwickshire is closed for repairs. The M1 southbound in Hertfordshire has lane restrictions between junctions 6 and 5. Major lane closures affect the M25 anti-clockwise in Surrey between junctions 9 and 7. In Devon, the M5 southbound at junction 31 has one lane blocked for drain works. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 20 minutes to 2. Now, this is an extraordinary story. A Christian woman who fled Islamic persecution to seek asylum in the UK has told GB News how she won the legal right to remain in the country after facing bias from the Home Office.
Yes, so Maria, that's not her real name, faced abduction attempts and a forced conversion to Islam before fleeing to Britain.
Well, she spoke to our national reporter Charlie Peters for this exclusive report.
It was a very hard time for me. They forced me to convert to Islam.
Maria, not her real name, faced religious persecution in a Muslim country.
There is one day, my daughter back from the school, she extremely crying, and I told her what happened, and I had a phone call at the same time from her bus driver, and he told me there is a people try to kidnap her today.
As a Christian, Maria was pressured into signing a conversion certificate at work. She believes that her colleagues tried to kidnap her daughter to force her into Islam. Arriving in Britain, Maria claimed asylum, but she claims that she faced bias.
First time, I just shocked because I seen that the lady, she will investigate me, she is a Muslim with hijab. So how come I can make a case against her religion? After I received the letter from the Home Office, they refused me.
And what about their response to your testimony about you being
threatened in your country of origin? Did they believe you when you said that you were facing those risks?
They didn't. They believe that my country is amazing, Islam is amazing in my country, and they said to me, your law in your country is amazing, nothing happened to the Christian.
Maria's application was rejected, but the decision was challenged by lawyer Michael Phillips from the Christian Legal Centre.
But when you scratch the surface, there was no credibility to their reasons whatsoever. We instructed an expert witness who just tore strips out of their report and really exposed the bias behind what they had said. And it was extremely concerning because they quoted report after report suggesting her country was safe, but it wasn't safe at all.
Dr. Martin Parsons, an expert in Christian persecution, assessed the evidence, which challenged the Home Office's stance.
This was a Muslim named assessor at the Home Office, and they had gone out of their way to hide the fact that that was an issue in this particular country, to the extent that they had ignored passages of the Home Office guidance for that country that referred to that issue of abduction of Christian women and girls. They had then gone to other sources and they had copied and pasted bits of other reports that solely presented a very positive image.
Following her appeal, Maria was granted asylum.
I always remember the day when I received the judgment on an email and I had the pleasure to ring her up and say, you never guess what, but you're going to be staying in this country. You're here, you're safe, you're going to be here forever.
How concerned are you that the Home Office was acting more in support of Islam than in support of you?
It's really scary. England, it's like pretty kind woman, but unfortunately she took a snake and sadly he will grow up and he will eat her.
Charlie Peters, GB News, London.
It's quite incredible, actually, that if the Home Office or people within the Home Office are acting in such an underhanded way.
I mean, I just can't imagine a world where, well, I mean, I can imagine it. It seems that we're living in this world where we're more likely to give asylum to persecuted Muslims than we are to persecuted Christians.
Well, I think it's an issue that goes unrecognised a lot, ignored a lot. I mean, if you look in a lot of the Islamic world, I mean, there are barely any Christians left in some of these countries.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So that's Charlie Peters' exclusive report for us.
Absolutely. So if you want to have a bit of a holiday, perhaps not as far as the Middle East, but here's the top European destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Whilst eastern parts of Europe are having some further heavy rain causing some issues here, it's a different story further west. A largely settled picture, a few showery bursts perhaps affecting the Canaries, but likely to avoid most of these. Also largely dry on Thursday across much of Spain and Portugal. A large chunk of Italy having a fine picture, but still some showery rain towards the east, and then a very wet story across more eastern parts, across Greece and Turkey, for example. See you later.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast. We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
To try and get rid of the St George's flag.
Well, firstly, I think a woke landing craft drove through our interview at 10 miles an hour. But answering your question, I was asked to change a whole bunch of things on that spring picture. And to this day, I don't know why. As I said previously, it was just selling very, very well. And all of a sudden, the skids hit, and I was told to remove several things for God knows why. It's been selling very well, so why would you want to change it? And to this day, I don't understand. Well, as they'll say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So, Mike, we see there the St George's flag. Let's get the next picture up. There's a saucy window cleaner halfway up the ladder there, peeking into a soap-covered, buxom young beauty. Presumably that's also anti-woke these days.
Well, I have to enjoy myself when I'm drawing something. I'll sit there drawing blokes all day.
So the person in the bath you made trans, fair enough. If you can't beat them, join them. And what about the Morris dancers?
Well,
they didn't even like Morris dancers, mate.
Yeah, the other thing is you've got to remember I live in Bognor Regis, so we're used to innuendo and lunacy.
So the fact of the matter is they censored your jigsaw, you told them to go and shove it. Do you think this is, you got a quick 30 seconds, any regrets on what you did?
No, not at all. I'm English, I'm very proud of my country. I don't care what anyone does. I don't want to join their club, but they're quite happy to do it. But I don't understand a professional suicide that company seemed to do by upsetting all the regulars that love doing my humour.
GB News. GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is now 12 minutes to 2 o'clock, and Elon Musk has suffered another setback, or indeed he's learnt quite a valuable lesson. Perhaps this is all part of the iterative development process, but what we're getting at is that his 9th Starship test launch exploded over the Indian Ocean.
Yes, so earlier GB News sat down with Elon Musk's father, Errol Musk, and this is what he had to say.
No failure in science. You learn that's something we're doing that's not right. So they tweak it here, they tweak it there, they try it. That's the wrong tweak direction. So it's nothing. It's simply another step towards finally having it work properly. So there's nothing to be concerned about.
Wow. Failure is the condiment that gives success its failure. Flavour. I've not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work.
Who said that?
Thomas Edison.
Oh, very good.
Failure is a detour, not a dead-end street.
But this is all about how Elon Musk develops his rockets, because the previous rocket, the sort of smaller orbital class rocket, the Falcon 9. It was developed in exactly the same way. You know, fire it up, see if it explodes, keep going until it works. But shall we get the views of the space and planetary scientist Andy Lound, who is down the line for us? Andy, a lot of people are spinning this as a failure for Elon Musk. Of course, he probably wanted the rocket not to explode. So where would you judge the outcome of this 9th test launch?
Yes, good afternoon. Yeah, part of the course, really. They're going to have 25 flights this year, and that's why there's a lot of flights, and it's all part of the testing programme. And as you beautifully described earlier, 2-stage rocket, because you can't beat a big rocket.
You're watching.
There we go. 400 foot tall altogether, 2 stages, the big booster stage. But this test flight was quite interesting because the booster stage had been used before. It was the first time they reused the big heavy booster. So they were able to run tests on the engines to see if they would work or not. The idea then was to bring the booster back, not in the old system, which we use an automatic system, but they're going to try and manually alter it to change its trajectory to bring it back. And that didn't work very successfully. That actually broke apart before it came down fully. And so they've learned a great deal, but they were trying something new on that. As for the Starship, the top section itself, it reached its correct trajectory. A door to launch dummy satellites failed to open correctly, and then they realised there was some actually fuel leaks. Now, these fuel leaks were critical because they controlled the attitude thrusters, the thrusters that manoeuvre the spacecraft into position for re-entry, and therefore they decided to power systems down then and accept that it was actually going to break up when it came back down. So again, it's just part of the course of learning step by step. Each bit is an increased success, of course, because they're able to use a reusable booster for the first time, so they can see the parameters of how the engines work on that. The new style of trying to manoeuvre it didn't seem to work very well, but they've learned what's needed on that, what aerodynamic changes need to be made. And as for the Starship itself, that's a step-by-step process. They've actually got it, no explosions on board in the engine compartment or anything like that this time, but fuel leaks. Fuel leaks are always a problem with this because the molecules, of course, of these kinds of fuels, methane and liquid oxygen, are actually quite small. So they're actually very difficult to actually control. Methane is quite difficult to control like that. Oxygen, of course, itself is a frozen liquid coolant, is liquid. A cryogenic component is actually quite difficult as well to seal, and that's why you always see the burning off. I mean, bearing in mind you've got the large molecule of water that water companies can't keep in at the moment. So
and that's at relatively consistent temperatures, because the thing about Starship, of course, is it's going from incredibly hot to very, very cold to incredibly hot, all in the space of not much time. But Andy, when's the next flight?
Well, if all goes well, I hope we're going to launch another one in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, in the middle of June, Flight 10, which will obviously carry on from the work they've done on this one and step-by-step approach. I mean, it's 25 flights altogether this year, so there's a phenomenal amount of flights to be made.
Tom wants to go to see one, Andy. That's why he's asking you. He's trying to work out a good time to
fly down to Boca Chica, Texas.
Yeah, bring me with you. I'd love to see one of these things launch live because it is truly fantastic. But yes, so it's going to be done. And I think Elon Musk's father was absolutely right. Their system of testing, I think, is the right way to do it, because you can't do this on a computer because the variables are too different when you get a piece of engineering work. I mean, I worked in engineering at one point for a time, and you couldn't beat a physical test to smash something up to see what happens, and that actually is how you learn better. And
well, let's hope he keeps on going with it and discovers even better ways of doing things. Andy Land, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much, space and planetary scientist there.
Yeah, let's. Well, there's much more to get to on Good Afternoon Britain. Do stay with us for the very latest from Liverpool and the Merseyside Police update. That next.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be a day of sunny spells and showers ahead. The odd shower could be heavy. We may even hear the odd rumble of thunder. But for many, it's going to be a much brighter day, still feeling warm across the south. And it's all thanks to this ridge of high pressure stretching its way eastwards towards the country through the course of the day. Now, we can't rule out that it's going to be totally dry. There are going to be some showers at times, particularly across the north as they sweep their way eastwards. The odd heavy shower, particularly across eastern areas in the afternoon. And as I say, there may be the odd thunderstorm around, but that should be fairly isolated. For many, it should be a dry and bright day and feeling warm in the sunshine, particularly across the south, highs reaching around 21 to 22 degrees Celsius. Then through into the evening, still once again the odd shower as they sweep their way eastwards, but largely easing away, leading to a largely dry evening across Scotland, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland. They will start to see some thicker cloud move its way in from the west, and elsewhere across England and Wales, fairly similar. Any showers easing away, and it should be mostly dry for a time. But I'm afraid the dry weather isn't sticking around. We're eventually going to see more cloud, outbreaks of rain push its way in from the west, leading to quite a wet start across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England and Scotland by the time we reach Thursday morning. And it could be quite a murky start to the day as well. Some quite low cloud drifting in from the west, so quite a murky and foggy start for many. But the cloud and rain does mean it's going to keep temperatures up, so it should be a largely mild start. But a fairly unsettled day ahead. Outbreaks of rain for many, particularly across the north, where it could turn quite heavy and blustery through much of the day. And still some outbreaks of rain across parts of Wales, easing as we head into the afternoon, staying largely dry and bright across the southeast, where it will be warm. But for many, it's going to be an unsettled day ahead with outbreaks of rain. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Someone is going to win the biggest prize package to date, and that someone could be you, driving away in this Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It has plenty of room for your family of 4, comes complete with kitchen, bathroom and all the space you'll need for life on the road. Plus, we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Wednesday, the 28th of May. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, we've got a lot on today. The Merseyside police continue to question the suspected driver of the car that ploughed into a crowd during Liverpool's Premier League Champions Parade. We'll bring you any updates.
Meanwhile, the UK's most senior police officer, Sir Mark Rowley, supports officers sharing more details about suspects with the public earlier in cases such as this.
Content will be all over social media very, very quickly. People will be making guesses and inferences. I think in that world, putting more facts out is the only way to deal with it.
Also warning Sir Keir Starmer, alongside other senior police figures, that he'll fail to deliver his crime pledges if he continues to press on with his early release scheme. That's Keir Starmer, that is. They warn police forces will not be able to cope with the inevitable increase in crime.
But could their jobs be made easier if cannabis was legalised? Yes, Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, is urging the government to decriminalise small quantities of the drug to stop ethnic communities being targeted and to free up police resources.
That's Sadiq to you. And Nigel Farage, actually, back in 2014, he agreed with the London Mayor on decriminalising possession of these drugs. Don't know what his view is now, but a GBN exclusive poll says that his party, Reform UK, have won over Labour's Red Wall, and he's actually now their favourite to become the next Prime Minister. He's also got the backing of former critic Elon Musk's dad, Errol.
What he's showing his mettle, you know. Previously he was a little bit too accommodating, I would say. And he stopped being accommodating, and that's what people want.
As the anthem reminds us, the true north is indeed strong and free.
And the King and Queen bid farewell to Canada after opening that nation's parliament.
A short but impactful visit. So has King Charles's visit reinforced Canada's sovereignty? More details shortly.
I watched the entirety of the Canadian state opening of Parliament yesterday afternoon. And I found it really interesting. The speech started with a land declaration acknowledgement that this was land that was taken from native peoples. I'm not sure if we should start every show with a land declaration acknowledgement that this is land taken from the Celtic peoples by the Romans and then the Anglo-Saxons and then the Normans. I mean, I'm not... Should we start doing that?
Do you think it's virtue signalling, Tom? Is that what you're saying?
I get that they do this in Canada, and I get that this is something that started recently. I mean, it's up to them, really. But I did think that...
A bit much, maybe.
I think it was a brilliant ceremony overall, and I thought it was great to see the King and Queen there. And I hope that more Commonwealth realms or states where the King is the head of state, I hope more of them invite him to open their parliaments. Perhaps not every year.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
But after an election, I mean, why shouldn't the King open the Australian Parliament or the New Zealand Parliament?
He has to read out these speeches from the various,
That's his job.
Governments and, yeah, I know.
I think the reason why, Her Majesty the Queen didn't start doing this when these places gained their independence or even earlier was it was hard to travel there. And of course, that's why you had the Governor-General model. But now the King did this trip in 2 days. I mean, there's no reason he shouldn't be opening the Australian Parliament or the New Zealand Parliament.
Well, if they invite him.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? King Charles, you've done it well in Canada. I think Mark Carney was absolutely delighted to have you there. Justin Trudeau wore his best shoes for you, so...
Maybe even he could open the Virginian House of Representatives, because I believe the Virginian House of Representatives still has a mace that has a crown on it, even though, of course, it's part of the Republic of the United States, sadly.
Anyway, let us know your thoughts. GBNews.com.
There is much more on the show today, other than
there is.
constitutional peculiarities.
But we just like to hit you with that at the top of the hour. Why not? GBNews.com/you'll say, do get in touch on everything and anything we're talking about. What do you make of decriminalising drugs, or at least cannabis? I don't think it's a good idea. He thinks it's probably a sensible idea. Where do you stand? Let us know. It is the headlines with Sophia Hill.
Emily, thank you. Very good afternoon. It's 4 minutes past 2. Let's bring you up to date with your latest headlines. Now, we start with some breaking news in just the last few minutes, saying that the police have been given more time to question a 53-year-old driver who allegedly ploughed into a crowd at Liverpool's Victory Parade on Monday. He will remain in custody after being arrested on suspicion of an attempted murder and dangerous driving, and also drug driving. Met Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley says he's in favour of putting more details of a suspect in public earlier. This, of course, comes after Merseyside police decided to reveal that the suspect they are considering was a white British man. GB News spoke to Liverpool fan Jack Trotter, who recalled his experience whilst attending the trophy parade.
Sort of, life or death, sort of just trying to survive, get out of the way of this car. I was able to sort of lock eye contact with him for like half a second. So it was, and then by that time he just tried to floor it and just basically ran right through me, essentially, to be honest with you, trying to kill me, trying to kill everyone else.
Now, top police and security chiefs are warning the government not to trade safety for space, as early prisoner release plans spark alarm. In a joint call, leaders from the Met, MI5 and the National Crime Agency say the move risks public safety and demand serious investment in order to cope. They also warn that out of prison must not mean out of control. Exclusive polling for GB News reveals that Reform UK is leading in traditional Labour strongholds. Reform UK has surged to the top of the Red Wall voting intentions, polling at 34%. That's ahead of Labour on 27% and the Conservative Party on 22%. Nigel Farage also leads as the preferred Prime Minister, beating Sir Keir Starmer by 3 points. This new polling from Merlin Strategy reveals deep voter frustration when it comes to spending. with most Red Wall voters wanting public services funded by cutting welfare, not by raising taxes. GB News spoke to Elon Musk's father, Errol Musk, this morning to get his views on Mr Farage.
What he's showing his mettle, you know. Previously he was a little bit too accommodating, I would say, and he stopped being accommodating, and that's what people want.
However, speaking to Shadow Work and Pension Secretary Helen Whately earlier on, she seemingly disagreed.
I think if we saw anything from what Nigel Farage set out yesterday, we saw the reason for why we need a Conservative Party. And so what we need is a Conservative Party, because the Conservative Party is the only party that is arguing for the sort of answers that Britain needs to our problems, for sensible economics, for living within our means, for supporting people to take personal responsibility, for lower taxes, for a strong economy, all of those things that really matter to people. And that is the offer that we want to be able to make to people at the next election. Reform's not going to give them that choice, but we will.
The head of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, has opposed the Mayor of London's call to decriminalise some cannabis possession. Sir Sadiq Khan says current laws on the drug cannot be justified. A new report from the London Drugs Commission, which he set up in 2022, argues the UK's approach is out of step and overly punitive. Mr Khan says the evidence now makes a compelling case for reform and is urging the government to act. A review has found that London's Heathrow Airport responded well to the major power outage in March that forced it to shut down for almost a day. Former Transport Minister Ruth Kelly, who led the review, says that Britain's biggest hub did well on the day and confirms that they were able to restore full operation smoothly. Ms Kelly went on to add that through the review they have learnt a number of lessons and they've now made recommendations on how Heathrow Airport can enhance its incident response. And Signal is finally reaching Scotland's remotest corners, with 4G upgrades bringing reliable mobile coverage to rural areas. 13 upgraded masts now support all major networks, improving connectivity in parts of Argyll, Ayrshire and the Borders and Dumfriesshire. The UK government says the move will transform daily life in the communities long left with poor or patchy signal. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour, but now it's back to Emily and Tom.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 9 minutes past 2. And we're going to bring in our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who has some breaking news for us. Mark.
Well, a couple of breaking lines on the investigation into that incident in Liverpool on Monday. Confirmation that the 53-year-old suspect is going to be held in custody for a bit longer. Police have been granted more time. They have to go to a magistrate to get an extension, but they have an extension in place until tomorrow to continue questioning this individual. And also they confirm that the number of people that they know to have been injured in this incident has now increased to some 79. So a very significant number of people injured in what happened at that victory parade for Liverpool in the city centre there. We've had a statement which I'll just read out to you. It's worth reading, I think, from Detective Superintendent Rachel Wilson from Merseyside Police. She said, "I'm pleased to say that the number of people in hospital is reducing." So it's now, we're told, from 11 yesterday down to 7 who are still in hospital today. And they continue, she said, to recover from the awful incident. "We continue to support those still receiving treatment, and as part of our ongoing inquiries, we are identifying more people who were injured. I want to reassure the public," she says, "of Merseyside that detectives are making significant progress as we seek to establish the full circumstances that led to what happened. In addition," she said, "extensive CCTV inquiries are being carried out across the city to establish the movements of the Ford Galaxy before the incident took place. We've already had an incredible response," she says, "from many of those who were there on that day." And again, she just goes on to thank them. And again, she would encourage anyone that's not yet contacted the police with information, or indeed to say that they may have been injured in that incident, to do so. So police making some progress. They're still not at the stage where they are charging anyone in connection with what happened. They have been granted that extension. They can get an extension, incidentally, up to 4 days. So they can be held for 24 hours, then a superintendent level or above has to grant an extra 12 hours. If they want to go beyond 36 hours, you have to go to a magistrate, but they can continue with these extensions if it's a serious offence, if more evidence needs to be gathered for up to 4 days.
It's normal then for the police to need
It can
an
be quite
extension.
normal and complex, for instance, complex murder investigations. So yeah, it can eke into that time quite significantly.
But of course, what the police said when the incident happened very quickly is they're not looking for anyone else in connection with this incident. I suppose if they are to charge an individual as time goes on, they'll want to know what to charge said individual with, and I suppose that means finding what the motive was, if there was a motive.
Yes, we'll certainly be trying to establish if there was a motive at play here, or what on earth the incident was all about in that sense. But they can charge effectively holding charges that can be amended at some point further down the road when more information comes out. So, for instance, they could, charge this individual with a number he's being held under on suspicion of attempted murder. They could charge him with a number of attempted murder offences, or even dangerous driving, driving under the influence of drugs offences in the meantime. And as I say, that can be added to. We often see that in cases where, in the weeks and months leading up to a trial, additional charges might be added to the indictment or taken away from the indictment. So they can do that. But clearly, they felt they need, for whatever reason, to have a bit more time before they get to a charging decision, and a magistrate's agreed with that. So tomorrow, again, we'll be at a place where we'll either hear from the police that they've been granted a bit more time, or we'll get a charge through. But I think probably the most significant thing out of that was the good and encouraging news that the number of injured still requiring hospital treatment has reduced by 4, so from 11 down to 7 now, still in hospital. But the overall number of injured has been revised up, because what's been happening is people who probably suffered relatively minor injuries have gone home and maybe then have reported the next day or whatever to a hospital or to the police about their injuries.
Yeah, and presumably in all this time as well, the police are scouring CCTV footage, speaking to eyewitnesses, speaking to businesses perhaps who are in the area.
Absolutely right, and they've been incredibly aided by the fact that there were so many people in that area at that time, thousands and thousands of people, and also many of their own officers. So they'll have this incident because we saw police chasing the car for a time. Some of that will have been captured on the body-worn video of the police officers who were right close to the incident as it unfolded. There's so much in the way of city centre CCTV cameras to look at. There will have been overhead, I'm sure, the police helicopter. You would always get that at mass sort of crowded events, such as an event like this where more than 100,000 people were in Liverpool city centre. The police helicopter probably captured a fair bit, and shop CCTV cameras. We know that some of the media have been able to find their own images from CCTV in the various shops along the route that show this incident unfolding as well. So there will be, without a doubt, a very significant number of sort of evidential elements that the police will be assisted by. Having said that, they've got to go through all that, and that takes a long time.
And in the meantime, an extra 24 hours for this individual they're holding.
Well, into tomorrow. We don't know if it's 12 or 24, but into
See what happens, basically. OK, Mark White, thank you very much indeed, our Home Security editor there. Now, staying on the theme of crime and punishment and policing, some of Britain's most senior police chiefs are warning that the government is set to fail on delivering their police reforms. They want extra funding. And there are also many other concerns.
Absolutely. The Met Police Commissioner, Mark Rowley, has not only said that there's a 1.3 billion shortfall in funding, but also that the government's proposed sentencing reform, that will put extra pressure on police officers because there'll be more perhaps dangerous criminals released early or never sent to prison at all about in the community, and they'll need more policing.
Yeah, Mark Rowley, he was talking about how much resources had gone into tracking down a guy with a machete for him to then only be put on bail, right?
Exactly. So someone they previously arrested under firearms and machete offences that they then had to release.
Yeah.
And then they spent all of yesterday, apparently, multiple police officers chasing around London, using up Met Police resources to catch the guy they'd already caught, who, by the way, had got himself another machete.
Right, OK. Well, we're joined by former Met Police Senior Investigating Officer Peter Kirkham. Thank you very much for joining us, Peter. Clearly, there are huge concerns among the policing community as well as MI5, the National Crime Agency, etc., that the government hasn't quite thought through the implications of the early release scheme, for example, sentencing reviews and everything else. What do you make of it?
I'm broadly with the concerns being expressed by the police and other law enforcement and security services. You can only get decent policing by spending money. It's a people business. It involves boots on the street. It involves people looking at anything that's created by artificial intelligence, looking at mass communications or whatever it might be. You can't do it without human beings, and human beings cost money. The costs that businesses complain of going up around national insurance and things like that, those costs of doing business apply to the public sector just as much as they do to the private sector. And the police in particular also still suffering from a retention crisis that's probably as bad as any, if not worse than most, in the public sector, in that the money just isn't commensurate with the risks and nature of the job involved. So hanging on to good police officers, recruiting them in the first place and hanging on to them is difficult. All of these things cost money.
Yeah, it does seem that there is this shortfall that more and more police officers are talking about, but perhaps that's only the tip of the iceberg. If we're going to be into this world with more criminals who need, for want of a better phrase, care in the community rather than being banged up in prison, I mean, that's going to increase an already stretched demand on police services.
For sure, and there are limitations to that. If someone is out in the community on a tag or on a curfew or on a residence note or whatever it might be, they also are at liberty to breach those restrictions if they so wish, to remove their tag or to breach their conditions of curfew or whatever it might be. And that requires police to then pick up the pieces afterwards. The probation service need resources to monitor, but the police then need resources to deal with any breaches that are reported to them by the probation service. And so there are significant costs and potential costs inherent in trying to have sentences within the community rather than behind bars. It's not a zero-cost option. Yeah. Quite the contrary, it's probably near enough as expensive once everything is added together as having someone in prison. It just doesn't need the cell space.
OK, well, Peter Kirkham, thank you very much indeed for your insight on this. Former Met Police Senior Investigating Officer there. We're going to fly all the way over to Canada now, though.
Yes, the King has sent his heartfelt thanks to Canadians for welcoming him to Ottawa during his first visit to the nation as their sovereign.
Yes, comes as the King delivered an historic speech to the Senate where he hailed the strength of the Canadian nation as he opened their parliament.
Well, joining us now is our royal correspondent Cameron Walker, all the way in Ottawa for us. And Cameron, it seemed to go down a storm.
Yeah, I think it did, Tom. I mean, I've been observing the King and Queen in close proximity, for a few months now. It's always quite a unique experience, but this time was very different indeed. Of course, it was a very short visit, only 20 hours or so. Palace sources wanted it to be impactful. I think perhaps it was. But yesterday, of course, he had the pomp and pageantry with the state opening of Parliament, a guard of honour, 21 gun salutes and all the rest of it. The crowds, of course, endured blistering temperatures. It's incredibly hot here in Ottawa. On the off chance they get a fleeting handshake with the monarch. There was a lot of enthusiasm for King Charles here. And back in May 2022, when I was last here covering the then Prince Charles and Duchess of Cornwall, there was a lot of indifference and there was a lot of calls from Indigenous communities for the then Prince Charles to apologise for the British Empire's role in taking over their lands. A lot less of that kind of talk this time, to be perfectly honest. A lot of enthusiasm, as I said, for King Charles. And I think, to be honest, that's because of what President Trump has been saying about Canada becoming the 51st state of the United States of America, effectively annexing Canada. And I think that has galvanised national pride here amongst Canadians. And of course, the centrepiece was King Charles sat on the throne in his Senate, in his Parliament, reading a speech but written by his government. And in that speech, he said that many Canadians are feeling anxious. He acknowledged that Canadians are feeling anxious about the changing state of the world. But he also used his soft power perhaps quite effectively. And he says that it was basically reminding foreign powers, i.e. perhaps President Donald Trump, of Canada's sovereignty. And he did actually directly reference the United States and the president in the speech, but he talked about the unity of the two nations, talking about defence pacts, talking about economic ties, rather than what divides the two countries, i.e. Prime Minister Mark Carney saying Canada is not and never will be for sale, and Donald Trump saying that Canada will be better off being part of the United States of America. Now, we spoke to Mark Carney yesterday, and he said to us that Canada's sovereignty is strong following the visit. He said that King Charles's visit here was incredibly successful. So, as I said, royal sources telling us that, they want the visit to be impactful. I think they're probably right in that regards, to be honest. And the King released a statement yesterday hinting that he wants to return to Canada one day alongside Queen Camilla. Now, of course, King Charles is still undergoing a weekly cycle of cancer treatment, but those close to him insist that he is still carrying out a full programme of national and international travel at the moment. So watch this space.
And Cameron, I think we've just got to show a photo to the audience of a certain... well, Cameron, you're always dressed appropriately for any occasion, aren't you, whether it's royal or anything else, but someone who wasn't was the former Prime Minister of Canada, and that is Justin Trudeau, and I believe we've got a little picture of what he chose to wear to the King's speech. And we need to remove the strap, because his feet are actually covered there. He chose to wear green Adidas sneakers, they're calling them.
Trainers.
Trainers, sneakers, there they are. Now, do we think that is, he wants a bit of attention? Attention-seeking?
Oh, it's bizarre, isn't it?
I mean, it's not appropriate, is it? I mean, Cameron, would you ever wear such a pair of shoes for such an event?
No, I think I'd be thrown out, Emily, to be perfectly honest. Maybe former Prime Ministers get away with that kind of thing. Look, Mark Carney was dressed incredibly appropriately in a suit and all the rest of it. It was a much less formal affair, I have to say, than a state opening of Parliament than you would get in the UK, for example, because King Charles was just wearing a normal lounge suit and medals, and the Queen was just in day dress. I think it was an Anna Valentine coat from memory. Whereas, of course, in the United Kingdom, King Charles would be wearing the imperial state crown and the robes of state, and Queen Camilla would be dressed quite regally as well. So it was a far more toned down affair, but I would suggest perhaps it's still formal enough that suits and, smart shoes and all the rest of it are the custom. But hey, he's no longer Prime Minister, is he, Justin Trudeau? So he's probably just let his hair down a bit.
Look, we've got to extend our sympathy to the jobless. Cameron Walker, thanks indeed for joining us live from a sunny Ottawa.
It's a bit rude, actually, to turn up in those shoes.
But I do think, actually, the King wasn't wearing a crown because he's not allowed to take the crown out of England.
Yeah.
It's the British crown. Canada doesn't have a crown. And we saw earlier that earlier this year, King Charles has increased his personal wealth by quite a degree.
Yes, he has, yeah.
I think, wouldn't it be a great gift for King Charles personally to have a crown made in the style of a Canadian crown to give to the Canadian people that he can wear whenever he's in Canada to open the Parliament?
They should have done it this time, really.
It would have been a brilliant gift to the Canadian people.
Can't wait till the next time. Well, that's a nice idea.
Yeah.
Well, it's Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show, so do stick with us. We'll be back in just 2 ticks.
Nigel is back.
Good evening.
Unfiltered.
Are these proposals bold enough?
Uncompromising.
Will it bring growth?
Unmissable.
We as a country are brilliant.
Nigel Farage returns this Tuesday from 7 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Now, part of a Soviet-era spacecraft stranded in orbit for more than 50 years will crash back to Earth today.
Yes, Cosmos 482 launched in 1972 on a mission to Venus, but it failed to escape Earth's orbit and broke into 4 pieces.
Well, now experts are closely monitoring its re-entry, but where it will land remains a mystery.
It was due to land in, what is it, about
Less
40 minutes now?
Yeah,
Not long to
like.
go till we find out. Well, earlier we spoke to space expert Andy Land. He told us what makes this spacecraft different to the others we've seen previously.
Currently, it's over the South Pacific, so it's heading towards South America. The odds are really unlikely. The chances are it's going to crash into the ocean, to be quite honest. Other parts of this fell into the Pacific Ocean, although in the early days when it got into the wrong orbit, of course, the lower sections of it actually crashed into New Zealand and landed in a field. But no, I think you got more chance of being struck by lightning or winning the lottery than actually being hit by a piece of this material. The only interesting thing about this mission, of course, it is a Venus atmospheric entry probe, which means it's designed to survive entry through a dense atmosphere. And in particular case, Venus's atmosphere is more dense than the Earth's atmosphere. It's designed to withstand fantastic temperatures, absolutely fantastic temperatures, huge pressures. So this piece will hit the ground or hit into the ocean. That's what makes this a very different creature from previous satellites which have broken up, which normally they just break up into pieces. This is designed to actually come back. And in case people think, well, wouldn't the parachute system operate? It's unlikely the parachute system is operating at all after half a century. So it's going to be a ballistic drop.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 29 minutes past 2. Now, exclusive polling for GB News reveals Reform UK is leading in traditional Labour strongholds.
Yeah, they've surged to the top of Red Wall voting intentions, polling at a massive 34%, ahead of Labour on 27 and the Conservatives on 22.
So Nigel Farage also leads as the preferred Prime Minister in these specific constituencies, beating Keir Starmer by 3 points.
Oh, joining us now to discuss this is GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Now, Adam, Labour HQ will be looking at this type of polling, scratching their heads and wondering what to do. We know all this talk about U-turns on various unpopular policies. It's striking. Nigel Farage is taking Labour's votes.
Yeah, and I discussed on this show yesterday with you, Tom, following the press conference that Nigel Farage held here in Whitehall, where that was really a tanks on lawn moment, and he clearly, he said on that stage actually that he was coming for the votes of the working people, that Reform UK, in his view, is now the party of working people, which is obviously aping the language of the Labour Party, particularly in the general election last year. And this polling from Merlin Strategy bears that out. It's an effective gambit for him, and that explains the policy positions he is taking and has announced in the last 24 hours, particularly on the winter fuel allowance, and also to a certain extent the 2-child benefit cap, although within this polling, it also says that these red wall voters would prefer benefit cuts to fund public services rather than, say, tax rises. Although even then, you can go back and forth on this as well. Farage said yesterday he acknowledges that this may be a controversial or not universally popular position to take right now as regards to the universal or the two-child benefit cap. Nonetheless, anyway, so back to the voting or the polling itself, right? So 34%, viewers have just seen on the screen, 34% in the red wall for Reform, 27% for Labour second, and Conservatives way down third, 22%. Now, these are 42 constituencies, which in 2019 the Conservatives basically wiped the floor with, and then most of them switched back in 24, albeit by narrow margins in a lot of cases, back to Labour. And of course now it seems that they're changing their minds again. And, look, a lot of the Labour MPs know this implicitly. They've seen that their margin of victory in their constituencies was wafer thin, and now they've got Reform snapping at their heels again already. The next 4 years are going to be really, really interesting. Just one final point I'll make before throwing it back is the preferred PM statistic as well. So Nigel Farage in first place there as well, preferred by 27% of red wall voters, and Keir Starmer on 24%. But interestingly, Angela Rayner, who is seen as the up and comer, the potential challenge to the red throne there, she is only on 5% as regarded as the best prime ministerial candidate rather for red wall voters, which slightly puts paid to the narrative that's been growing in the last few days in the newspapers that she is the one who will maybe rescue Labour's chances if at some point in the next few years there is a vacancy at the top.
Adam Cherry, thanks for joining us live from Westminster.
I just say, apparently Nigel Farage has just been challenged to a head-to-head debate by the Scottish Labour leader, Anna Sarwar, after being accused of putting out a racist advert ahead of next Thursday's Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse by-election. Right, OK.
Yeah, of course, he replayed that advert at the press conference yesterday when asked by a reporter would he stand by it.
Nigel wants to debate with Keir Starmer, doesn't he?
But it is worth saying that the advert is just Anna Sarwar speaking at an event for Pakistani Muslims, I believe, or Muslims or Pakistanis in general. I think just Pakistanis in general, and it was a clip of him speaking. But that is clearly going to be a scandal that it will run and run. I wonder what Nigel Farage will say. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and lots more coming up on today's programme.
Yes, sir. Is the future of farming an allotment for every household? So if you build a house, it has to have an allotment. Is that the idea?
Well, that's what the woman who's leading the government's farming review seems to suggest. But we'll get to that after Sophia Hill's news update.
Tom, thank you. A very good afternoon. It's just gone 2:30. These are your latest headlines. Start with some breaking news in the last half hour that the police have been given extra time to question a driver who allegedly ploughed into a crowd at Liverpool's Victory Parade. The 53-year-old suspect remains in custody after being arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, dangerous driving and drug driving. Merseyside police have issued a statement updating that 7 people remain in hospital in a stable condition. Detective Superintendent Rachel Wilson has said that she's pleased that the number of people in hospital is reducing as they continue to recover from the awful incident. She went on to say how she wants to reassure the public that their detectives are making significant progress as they seek to establish what happened on Monday. Now, top police and security chiefs are warning the government not to trade safety for space as early prisoner release plans spark alarm. In a joint call, leaders from the Met, MI5 and the National Crime Agency say the move risks public safety and demands serious investment to cope. They're warning that out of prison must not mean out of control. And the head of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, has opposed the Mayor of London's call to decriminalise some cannabis possession. Sir Sadiq Khan says the current laws on the drug cannot be justified. A new report from the London Drugs Commission, which he set up in 2022, argues the UK's approach is out of step and overly punitive. Mr Khan says the evidence now makes a compelling case for reform and urges the government to act. A review has found that London's Heathrow Airport responded well to the major power outage in March that forced it to shut down for almost a day. Former Transport Minister Ruth Kelly, who led the review, says that Britain's biggest hub did respond well on the day and confirmed that they were able to restore full operation smoothly the next day. Ms Kelly went on to add that through the review, they've learnt a number of lessons and they've now made recommendations on how Heathrow Airport can enhance its incident responses. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Sam Francis will have your next update in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.346 and €1.191. The price of gold is £2,459.10 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,766 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be a day of sunny spells and showers ahead. The odd shower could be heavy. We may even hear the odd rumble of thunder, but for many it's going to be a much brighter day, still feeling warm across the south. And it's all thanks to this ridge of high pressure stretching its way eastwards towards the country through the course of the day. Now, we can't rule out that it's going to be totally dry. There are going to be some showers at times, particularly across the north as they sweep their way eastwards, 1 to 22 degrees Celsius. Then through into the evening, still once again the odd shower as they sweep their way eastwards, but largely easing away, leading to a largely dry evening across Scotland and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, though we'll start to see some thicker cloud move its way in from the west. And elsewhere across England and Wales, fairly similar, any showers easing away, and it should be mostly dry for a time. But I'm afraid the dry weather isn't sticking around. We're eventually going to see more cloud, outbreaks of rain push its way in from the west, leading to quite a wet start across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England and Scotland by the time we reach Thursday morning. And it could be quite a murky start to the day as well, some quite low cloud drifting in from the west, so quite a murky and foggy start for many. But the cloud and rain does mean it's going to keep temperatures up, so it should be a largely mild start. But a fairly unsettled day ahead, outbreaks of rain for many, particularly across the north where it could turn quite heavy and blustery through much of the day, and still some outbreaks of rain across parts of Wales, easing as we head into the afternoon, staying largely dry and bright across the southeast where it will be warm, but for many it's going to be an unsettled day ahead with outbreaks of rain. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. In Wakefield, the M62 westbound at junction 32A is down to one lane due to barrier repairs. Knowsley's M57 southbound exit at junction 1 is closed for emergency roadworks. Solihull's M6 northbound between junctions 4 and 6 is down to one lane. The M45 eastbound in Warwickshire is closed for repairs. The M1 southbound in Hertfordshire has lane restrictions between junctions 6 and 5. Major lane closures affect the M25 anti-clockwise in Surrey between junctions 9 and 7. In Devon, the M5 southbound at junction 31 has one lane blocked for drain works. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 2:40 and we've got some breaking news to bring you in the last few moments. Yes, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, has said Hamas Gaza chief Mohammed Sinwar has been killed. So he's announced that a Hamas chief has been killed.
They've got another one. Well, we'll bring you more on that, of course, as we get it. But back to this country now. Every new housing development should include an allotment. That's according to Baroness Batters, the former NFU, National Farmers Union president, who's leading a government review into the future of farming.
I mean, it'd be quite nice to have an allotment, wouldn't it? But should it be a prerequisite for building something? Let's speak to the policy director at Restate, the think tank, Joe Hill. Joe, will people take this suggestion seriously? Do you think that we need more allotments? What's going on here?
I suspect they won't, and I don't think they should either. I mean, we have a profound housing crisis in this country, and year on year we find we're able to build fewer and fewer homes, despite the government's commitment to build even more. Kind of roughly double the rate we currently are. We also need to have a conversation about the future of the farming industry and how we can, sustainably grow more produce at home. But trying to take those two really good ideas and put them together, I think, probably gets you the worst of both possible worlds. Most of this country is going to be completely uneconomical to also try and build allotments right next to new housing developments, particularly in London, where I live. And look, in southwest London, I happen to know that wait times for an allotment can be over 5 years, and plenty of the ones in Richmond Borough aren't taking anyone new. Their wait lists are just that long. So many people want these, but I think much more than that, they want much more affordable housing, and this isn't a route to it at all.
And Joe, it wasn't so long ago that you wrote a really interesting paper on something you determine to be everythingism, when the government tries to deliver every single policy goal that they have in just about everything that they do. Can you explain what you mean?
Of course. I think everythingism, which is this term we've coined, is where so much of politicians and policymakers go wrong, in that they take lots of things which are good ideas and think, well, if we take that good idea and that good idea and that one, and we add them all together, we're going to get, the best possible policy ever. And actually, we get the worst. So everythingism is where we say that every government policy needs to be about every other policy all the time. And this is just one example. There are loads of them. The planning system is replete with them. And we've spent months now talking about the kind of infamous Bats Tunnel example, where we spent well over 100 million to protect bats which don't live in a particular forest from trains which might hurt them. And that's caused a huge ballooning in the cost of HS2. It's not the only example, and many of these infrastructure projects are replete with them. But, there are plenty of other policy areas where we do the same. I don't know about you, but I've lost track of the number of different things we've called for, including to be, on the school curriculum at different points. But, the school curriculum isn't infinite. We can't get kids to sit in class for more and more time over time. At some point, we have to cut it off. And very few people are volunteering things to come out of the curriculum or come out of planning requirements. So everythingism is just this sort of social phenomenon. I think it's really prevalent in Westminster, where people just keep adding things.
I was looking at some of the examples that you were posting on social media a little bit earlier today. Ofsted, the body that is supposed to deliver school standards, apparently now they're saying that they should be encouraging schools to tackle climate change.
Oh,
what does the body that says that teachers should stick to rigorous standards have to do with climate change? I mean,
the climate crisis, Tom.
Well, there are so many more examples of this. Research funding to universities, if those universities have good diversity and inclusivity strategies.
Oh, very important.
I mean, if you're researching something good, what does it matter what your policy is on diversity? I mean, all of these things, sort of anything that the government touches, it can't just buy some paper clips from a manufacturer. The manufacturer has to be filling all sorts of social value criteria alongside. They can't buy the cheapest paper clips because they have to buy the paper clips from the company that does the best out of climate change and gender recognition and diversity and all the rest of it.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's bonkers.
Yeah, it's bonkers. Joe, we're going to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed, Joe Hill, Policy Director at Restate think tank. Those are some good examples, Tom. Yes. Why does your window have to be DEI friendly or whatever it is? I don't know. I have no idea. But I do just want to draw your attention to an article that I saw.
Oh, yes.
About, and I just wondered if... So, apparently attractiveness pays for the pretty dim, not the bright and beautiful. So, now for decades, it's been assumed, research has showed that if you are more beautiful or more attractive, then you're likely to earn more than your more plain peers. And I just wondered, do you think that being beautiful in your case...
Sorry.
is a reason why you've got your job?
I'm far too English.
Do you think if you were hideously ugly, you'd be sat next to me here?
I think beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who think I'm hideously ugly.
But But apparently for the intellectually gifted, which of course you come under, it makes absolutely no difference to your earnings whether you're ugly or pretty.
So, sorry, is this in... Which paper is this in? This
is
in
the Times.
This is in the Times
newspaper.
So if you're not intellectually gifted but you're very beautiful, you'll earn more than the other way. But if you're intellectually gifted, it doesn't matter if you're pretty or not.
Presumably because you'll be working behind a computer solving rocket science and you don't need to be very pretty for that.
Does that mean that is that a big implication that we're not particularly intellectually gifted?
Well, I don't know. You might be the exception that proves the rule.
I don't know. I think it's always a road to nowhere trying to guess what other people might think of you, whether it's your intellectual capability or how you look.
Well, Tom, you can ask our audience.
You've got to leave that to other people.
Is Tom more beautiful or more intellectually gifted or both together?
Oh no,
I'm so embarrassed.
I've been ambushed.
Well, I think you're both, so I think that actually you don't prove this rule.
Oh, that is very
particularly as you have a public-facing role, so people see you.
I would like to return the compliment, obviously. But
now it just seems fake, Tom.
No. Let's fly away from this conversation quickly by checking the travel weather.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Whilst eastern parts of Europe are having some further heavy rain causing some issues here, it's a different story further west. A largely settled picture, a few showery bursts perhaps affecting the Canaries, but likely to avoid most of these. Also largely dry on Thursday across much of Spain and Portugal. A large chunk of Italy having a fine picture, but still some showery rain towards the east, and then a very wet story across more eastern parts, across Greece and Turkey, for example. See you later.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 3. Now, the makers of the BBC's new Jane Austen drama will not feature posh accents.
Posh accents. Producers of the show say not everybody spoke posh in those days.
Well, that's one way to put it. Joining us now is the etiquette expert, Liz Brewer. Liz, thanks for joining us. I mean, it seems like a very strange decision from the producers.
It sounds extraordinary. I mean, I haven't seen this programme, but this is not a Jane Austen novel that's being made into a film. This is a film about, presumably, Jane Austen. Now, you've got to bear in mind that when she wrote her book, you know, there were people in different areas of England. People had regional accents. And if you came from a certain sort of Park Gate stately homes and were brought up in a certain way, then you spoke fairly eloquently and people could understand them. I have no problem with regional accents. I never have. But I have a problem if I can't understand what the person's saying. Here you've got a production where you've got actors, you've got presumably people playing tradesmen, below stairs and upstairs, and therefore you have to differentiate. And it's nothing to be snobbish about, it's just a question of being realistic.
The producers think that we fetishise posh accents in these types of dramas. Do you think we fetishise posh accents?
That's rubbish. That's such rubbish. And I think the fact that over 200 and... what was it? She was born 250 years ago, 250 years ago, and started writing when she was 11, 12, whatever. And yet today, what she wrote about, we still relate to. When these film productions are done, we want to see them. They are wonderful. We love the pomp and ceremony. We love the bonnets and the dresses. And we like to differentiate between the different
But of course,
people.
we should have all of it, and we shouldn't discriminate against people who pronounce their words correctly.
Ms. Brewer, thank you very much indeed. And speaking of posh accents, one man who can't hide his posh accent is Martin Daubney, and he's up next. Martin.
At last, there's room in a Jane Austen drama for commoners like me. Fantastic show, fellas. On today's show, the knives are out for Nigel Farage. He's ahead in the polls. He's seriously been taken as a contender for our next Prime Minister. Now, the Conservative Party comparing him to Jeremy Corbyn. The Labour Party comparing him to Trustonomics. I'll be joined by Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, who'll explain why he thinks Nigel Farage's economics are fantasy. I'll also be joined by somebody who thinks Nigel Farage is now left-wing, and finally a top Fleet Street columnist who thinks Nigel Farage is basically already the de facto Prime Minister. Plus, a pride flag has been removed from Durham County Council. I'll be joined by a local pride director who says he feels unsafe, and the councillor who thinks taking that flag down was absolutely brilliant. What a show. It's coming 3 till 6, but first it's time for your weather forecast.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head through this evening, any showers largely easing away, but the dry weather is not set to last, eventually turning wet and windy from the west, leading us to a rather unsettled day on Thursday. But for the time being, a ridge of high pressure means largely dry to end this evening and for the first part of the night too. Any showers becoming confined to eastern areas before drifting into the North Sea, but eventually turning cloudier with that wet and windy weather returning from the west, particularly across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland and northern parts of England, where it could turn heavy at times and often quite blustery by the morning. But even across the south, the rain largely confined to western areas, but plenty of low cloud, which means it's going to be quite a murky morning for many. And outbreaks of rain set to continue, particularly across Scotland, where once again it is going to be the heaviest in the west. So a very wet start as we head into tomorrow, turning very blustery, particularly around exposed coasts. And once again across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, a wet start with some heavy outbreaks of rain at times, and plenty of low cloud across the rest of England and Wales. Quite a dank start to the day. And I'm afraid there's not much improvement across northern areas. It's likely we'll see a continuation of outbreaks of rain, still heavy at times and still quite blustery. It perhaps may ease off a little bit across central areas and across the southeast, but still plenty of cloud around. But across these areas, that's where it's still going to feel rather warm, still highs reaching around the low 20s, but across the far north, still not particularly cold, but obviously not feeling quite as pleasant under the cloud and rain. Then through into the evening, still some outbreaks of rain at times, not really easing away until we reach Friday, but even still there's a chance of some drizzly showers. And for the weekend, I'm afraid there's further rain on its way, particularly Saturday, where we could see some quite wet weather and temperatures remaining around similar.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with skyroof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or